What if we could stop the pain from hurting? What if we knew that love could mend the spirit broken into reverse that broken feeling? Just say I do, and I will follow wherever you may go. I know it's so uncertain, but I'm tired of hurting now. All my tears and searching, gonna open up my curtains now. 'Cause I don't wanna miss out. Take me on a big adventure, baby. If we stay together, we could stay young forever. Where will you go if you could time travel? Take me on a big adventure, baby. If we stay together, we could stay young forever. Where will you go if you could time travel? What if we could pick up the missing pieces? What if we knew the love would never let us down? Broken into reverse that broken feeling. To say I do, and I will follow wherever you may go. I know it's so uncertain, but I'm tired of hurting now. All my tears and searching, gonna open up my curtains now. 'Cause I don't wanna miss out. Take me on a big adventure, baby. If we stay together, we could stay young forever. Where will you go if you could time travel? Take me on a big adventure, baby. If we stay together, we could stay young forever. Where will you go if you could time travel? Where will you go? Where will you go if you could time travel? I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect good. I've been waiting for the one forever. Finally I got you, baby, here in my heart. When I'm with you I feel so much better, oh yeah. Before you I was just a shell, so stuck in the dark. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky, oh. There's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good. Follow your heart, baby, don't be shy. Just follow yours and I'll follow mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good. Something good. Something good. Life goes up and it goes down. I know my mom taught me that. I figured why we fool around so little, and we keep track of time, being so serious, idiots, thinking it will matter, keep me company downtown before the clock runs out. Sun is shining, but the rain is welcome too. Friends are nearby, don't need another view. Time is not on my mind, but then it's you. Oh, I love it when the love comes around, and then I remember all things must pass. But I'm not gonna wake up, wake up. I'm not ready, let me have another day. Don't wake up, wake up. Keep it steady, 'cause I'm happy, I'm not gonna wake up. No, no, not yet, whoa. No, not yet, whoa. No, no, not yet, whoa. I'm afraid I'll end up nowhere. They keep saying I'll be fine, but how you know that I'll be there when it feels like I'm lying every time someone asks how it goes, and I save the details that actually mean something. Sun is shining, but the rain is welcome too. Friends are nearby, don't need another view. Time is not on my mind, but then it's you. Oh, I love it when the love comes around, and then I remember all things must pass. But I'm not gonna wake up, wake up. I'm not ready, let me have another day. Don't wake up, wake up. Keep it steady, 'cause I'm happy, I'm not gonna wake up. No, no, not yet, whoa. No, not yet, whoa. No, no, not yet, whoa. But I'm not gonna wake up, wake up. Don't wake up, wake up. Keep it steady, 'cause I'm happy, I'm not gonna wake up, wake up. I'm not ready, let me have another day. Don't wake up, wake up. Keep it steady, 'cause I'm happy, I'm not gonna wake up. No, no, not yet.
All right, everybody, it is about that time. Let me see here. Just messing with some settings. So, yeah, it is Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It's time for another episode of Beyond the Doll. Today is episode 10. Let me just switch everything over here so you guys can see me. Okay, there we go. Hello. Hello, everybody. So, today is episode 10 of Beyond the Doll. And we have a very special guest tonight that is going to be talking to us about having an online shop. They are an online shop selling doll clothing and other various things. And we'll be talking to them about what it's like to be a shop owner and to do things online and to be a creative in general. So, with me today is my very lovely prowess in tea. And let's go ahead and introduce our guest. So let me go and hold on, change screens and bring our guest in. Let's see, where is it? Okay, here we go. So everybody, welcome. Like No Otter Shop. This is our guest today. She
Hi.
he's the creator of Like No Otter Shop. You can address him as Vic or Tyler. I believe you go as either or, right?
Yeah, I use both names. Online, I usually respond a lot to Tyler, but in person, it's usually Vic. So I use both interchangeably.
Okay. And so Vic is the owner, creator slash creative, the one and only person that really does everything for the Like No Otter shop. And you are on, I guess initially you were on Etsy, but you now have your own private website where you do most of your sales, right? I got
Yeah,
that correct,
I
right?
have both at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people who are in the little community know what's been going on with Etsy, and it's not good.
Right, right.
So I try to move all of my sales to my main website any way I can.
Right. And we'll touch more on that as we get further on in today's episode, but that's generally, what's going on with today as we have Vic here going to be speaking. So before we start on the nitty-gritty of everything today, let's just say hello to everybody in chat right now. So we have Batman Jackson, welcome. Welcome to the stream.
Hello.
I see your you're hyped about Kaito, huh? Yeah, I know. I know. He's a pre-order. I'm pretty sure a lot of people are really excited that he's a pre-order and he's not gonna be a click war or anything like that. White Rose. Hey White Rose, welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight? I see you're excited for Kaito too. A lot of people are. A lot of people are. So hopefully the thing about Kaito that I think is really interesting is he's going to have a shorter time period. So usually they have like a whole year for these pre-orders. I think he's only like half a year to 8 months or something like that. So it's a shorter turnaround time. But yeah, I could see the both of you being really excited, plus a lot of people really excited. So, anyways, that seems to be everybody that's in chat right now. So, let's get started with today's episode into the nitty gritty of it all. So, Vic here is our guest for today's episode. So, one thing I want to do to get everybody started with what we're going to be talking about is just a little bit of an introduction on yourself, like your origin story. Like, how did you get started? So first up, how about we just talk about like how you got into the doll hobby in general? Like how did that come about?
I began many years ago. Uh, as a non binary slash trans person, I grew up as a girl. And it began with Bratz and Barbies and stuff, but wasn't really a big deal until my early teens when Monster High came out.
Hmm.
Monster High kind of sparked something, and I started becoming a collector. I had a quite big collection of Monster High. I was collecting things before then, but not like any kind of doll.
Mm-hmm.
But Monster High appealed a lot to me as someone who's different from other people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that they do have the whole thing of like you can embrace your flaws and you don't have to be the perfect Barbie that everyone else is.
Hmm. Well, I
Yeah.
know that the whole line of dolls, though. I mean, Monster High, and then I think there's the Bratz line, which is also, I think, somewhat similar, right? They're
Yeah, brats were like also the whole thing of like, oh, we're not the pink bimbo girl that everyone adores. It was a lot more of like your own style
hmm
too,
hmm
but not as much as Monster High leaned into.
hmm
Um,
right. And I know that those lines of dolls are pretty popular. I know a lot of people that are collecting them, and I see them all over the place. On YouTube or on social media as well. So it's a pretty popular line of dolls.
yeah, both of those are popular. There's a reason there's even a re-release of Monster High dolls.
Hmm.
Enough people wanted them back.
Right, right.
Enough people like of similar age as me or who started out collecting dolls through Monster High or like maybe didn't even have the chance to experience the first round of Monster High dolls.
Hmm.
Because I'm not one to speak about the second round of Monster High dolls when they basically became green Barbies.
Oh.
um,
Yeah, I'm not too overly familiar with like Monster High or anything like that. Like
I don't
I
keep
know they
I,
exist, but like I don't really like keep up with them. But they are pretty popular from what I understand.
yeah, I don't keep up with them that much anymore.
Hmm.
Um, I dropped off before the whole second release
Hmm.
wave came out. They basically started looking exactly like all of the knockoff dolls,
Oh.
um, and just kind of lost the whole charm of, especially the whole thing with articulation.
Hmm.
Um, Everyone who collects like any of the bigger dolls, if they suddenly started releasing them, but without like being able to bend their arms or knees,
Hmm.
with riot.
Hmm.
um,
There definitely
all of
would
them.
be there definitely would be a lot of people talking about that. That would be a hot topic if that came to
Yeah, like
be.
if Dolphin Dream suddenly released like a doll just like any of the other ones, don't mention anything about it, but it only has like the hip and shoulder articulation.
Hmm. Hmm.
People
Yeah.
wouldn't be as happy if they paid the same amount of money for it.
Yeah, especially without warning too. Like if there was no
Yeah,
warning and they just kind of changed it on the fly, I'm sure. Yeah, that would definitely make things
but
pretty
yeah,
different.
as a collector of Monster High dolls when I was younger, I watched a lot of doll YouTube,
Hmm.
and from DIYs to crafting and stuff, I came across some customizers.
Hmm.
Like, I don't remember who was customizing back then. I think like even Delightful was one of them.
Hmm.
And through like watching customizing of Monster Highs and other dolls, like suddenly like some random customizer was doing a random BAD,
Hmm.
like custom face up on a mini fee or something.
Hmm. Oh, so
And
like the resin dolls, I guess.
yeah,
Okay.
um, and I, it was fascinating at first, but I was like, those have to be so expensive. I will never be able to buy one of those. Again, I was still like a young teen at this point.
Hmm.
um, but I kind of got into the BAD hobby with the resin dolls first,
Hmm.
and then ended up getting a Dolphin Dream, and now I have 3 smart dolls and a couple of floating heads.
Floating heads is
um,
becoming a pretty big thing nowadays, at least with smart dolls.
yeah, the only floating head I have though is a head I customized myself.
Hmm.
Well, technically 2 I customized myself, and 1 head I am going to send to a specific person to get a
Hmm.
face up on.
Were the heads that you got? They were like chaos heads, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
I see.
chaos heads. I've cut the 2 I'm customizing myself.
Hmm.
Um, and since I have each of the main current skin tone dolls, I
Mhm.
can display them on any of the bodies.
Mhm.
Um,
So when going back a little bit to touch upon your earlier experiences, you said that you were watching doll customizers and you started getting into like vinyl dolls. Do you have any like in particular that you remember, or maybe you still have some resin dolls that you started collecting in the
I
beginning?
Oh, I have multiple resin dolls. I even have some coming in to me soon.
Oh, okay. So you're
Um,
still a resin collector then. Okay.
yes, but I have a preference for the
Mm-hmm.
1/3 scale.
Okay. So you
And
know the
when resin
60.
dolls start getting that big, it's a lot to handle.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of
Um,
guests, you know, in prior episodes have mentioned about resin dolls being heavier than the vinyl
oh
dolls.
yeah, yeah. Yaki here, my Liberty, she's weightless compared to like any of my resin girls.
Hmm.
Um,
And would you say that you have quite an extensive collection of resin dolls as well?
well, I have more resin dolls than I have vinyl dolls.
Okay.
But I've been collecting resin dolls for a longer time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've also sold off a couple of resin dolls
Mm-hmm.
in previous situations, either because I needed the money or I didn't bond with the doll. It happens.
Yeah, yeah, that does
Uh,
happen. And it does make sense that you have more resin dolls than you have vinyl because you started with the well, not that you started with resin dolls, but rather you started collecting resin dolls before you started with the vinyl dolls.
yeah, and if I could, I would have like 5 more smart dolls, but they're expensive too.
Yeah. Well, I mean
um,
dolls in general in this hobby are pretty expensive. Whether it's I guess vinyl or resin, they can get pricey, depending on
yeah,
where you buy them or which ones that you buy too as well. The prices can be quite high depending on what you're looking for. That
yeah.
is true.
Secondhand market is also a little bit bigger for resin dolls, I believe.
Mhm.
But that's because they've also been around, I think, longer than the vinyl dolls in a sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they've been a collector thing for a longer time.
Mhm. No,
Um,
that's definitely true. So what got
and a lot
you
of the brands are like still producing some of their older dolls too, so they
uh
don't really drop that much in value or gain that much in value because some of the places are still producing them.
Oh, okay. So not every doll is basically like a one-off type of thing. Like sometimes they still produce like a I guess you could say a standard type doll.
Yeah. I have one doll that I ordered that's basically standard. You can basically buy her at any time from the shop.
Mhm. I see.
Kind of like how Smart Doll always has Mirai in stock.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, or how Dolphy Dream always have like some of their front lines basically
Mhm.
always available.
Right.
The same thing goes with some of the resin dolls. It
Okay.
depends on if it's from a big company or an independent artist.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So when you were collecting resin dolls, at what point did you discover the vinyl dolls and then said, "Hey, maybe I want to jump into this venture as well and start collecting vinyl dolls."
Um, I don't know exactly when. I already had, I think, two 1/4 scale resin dolls and I believe 1/6 or 2/16. I don't remember exactly. I
Mhm.
currently I don't have any in the smaller scale than 1/4,
Mhm.
except for like a little buggy girl, but she's so tiny she doesn't count. Um, but it was a couple of years ago. I know that much.
Mhm.
I think it was probably like 4 years ago or something.
And was it by
Um,
chance a Dolphy Dream that caught your eye, or was it a smart doll?
it was actually a Dolphy Dream hybrid.
Oh, a hybrid one. Okay.
Her body is a Dolphy Dream sister,
Mhm.
and the head was an SQ lab. They don't make heads anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but I didn't bond that much with the head in the long run, so she currently is a full-on Dolphy Dream all the way through.
I see.
But I got her secondhand, and she was quite cheap. So I was like, "Hey, at least I can get my money back if I don't like this kind of doll."
Mm-hmm.
I still have her.
Mm-hmm.
She's sitting over there, looking cute. Um, uh, she, I don't know, she just caught my eye. I have a really big thing for really cute characters,
Mm-hmm.
at least when it comes to females.
Mm-hmm.
And she had that really, really cute, just open round mouth with a little snaggy tooth.
Oh yeah, I know those types.
Yeah,
Those are very cute
it
looking.
was so, she was so adorable. So I got her. She was like at the most $200.
Oh, that's not a bad deal at all.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad deal at all for a vinyl doll.
Mm-hmm.
Being in the hobby right now and buying some of the dolls new, that's not a bad deal.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's
um,
pretty good steal that you got there.
then I put some extra money into getting a new head and stuff and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But um, it was a really great way for me to segue into vinyl dolls.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't really bond with the size
Okay.
uh, like right away,
Mm-hmm.
because I started out with a certain size and you kind of like have a hard time moving to another size.
Yeah, no, I totally get that because my first dolls were Dolphy Dreams, and they were the 1/3 60 centimeter ones,
Yeah.
and like all my dolls are basically that. Like I ventured into getting the Dolphy Dream sister and the mini Dolphy Dream, and now I have an A Zone girl, and all of them are shorter to a certain extent than a regular Dolphy Dream 60 centimeter, and whenever I buy dolls, I always see myself gravitating towards the 60 centimeter most of the
Yeah.
time, anyways. So I definitely understand that, like, you haven't end up having like a favorite, I guess you could say, size or scale rather.
Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of people don't realize their favorite scale until they've had a doll in that scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought, a 1/3 scale is massive.
Mm-hmm.
I went from collecting Monster High dolls, they're 1/6 scale.
Right.
And I bought a 1/4, and I was like, this is big, this is a lot to handle.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you it's not compared to a 1/3 scale doll. um, Although these pose and handle a lot better than some of the resin dolls do, of course,
Mm-hmm.
comes with not having actual rubber bands as like ligaments in the joints.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah, we talked about that in a prior episode with one of my guests, how, the differences between being able to pose like a vinyl doll that has an internal skeleton versus like a resin doll that you have to string up with rubber bands. It
yeah,
can be done and they can stand, but from what I'm told, they're a little bit more finicky to hold poses than a vinyl doll.
yeah. There's also certain poses they just can't do
Hmm.
sometimes. Like certain things of like how you can keep an arm a certain direction doesn't work on some of the strong dolls.
Hmm.
Simply because of the rubber bands, they want the path of least resistance, so it's either straight or bent.
Mm.
The in between is really hard to nail.
Hmm.
And you can tell if someone is a really good sculptor by if the doll can actually just have that slight tilt without flopping either direction.
Mm. It's interesting. Oh, we have Batman Jackson says, same as me, 1/3 resin is my favorite size too. So she agrees.
Yeah, like uh, the Dolphy Dream sister is a 1/3, but she's shorter than the Smart Dolls.
Hmm.
Not by a lot, but just a tiny bit.
Hmm.
Uh, and was a good way to kind of ease into the size. And a good like invitation to getting into the bigger size dolls
Hmm.
that isn't getting a 70 centimeter resin doll, because I've tried to hold one of those boys. They are like holding an angry toddler, basically. If they're not strung correctly, they're gonna kick in every direction,
Right.
and they weigh a lot, and it's a lot to handle.
Yeah, I went to a doll meet once where an individual brought in a 70 centimeter resin. And like, yeah, I can definitely agree they're pretty heavy. They're hefty indeed. So
Yeah, sometimes I call it basically wrestling with a toddler when you try to dress a doll. Depends a lot on what doll it is, of course, but
right, but the bigger
even some
ones
of the smart
obviously.
dolls, even some of the smart dolls sometimes fight back.
So you mentioned that your first doll was a hybrid Dolphy Dream. That was a Dolphy Dream sister. So when you made the step up to 1/3 in 60 centimeters, was it a smart doll or was it another Dolphy Dream type at that point?
I've actually never bought another Dolphy Dream.
Okay, so she
I've
was
only
your
gotten
first and
her.
only.
I've only gotten her some hands and a new head.
Mm.
Um, so my first smart doll was actually a Cortex.
Oh, really? Wow,
Yep.
that's pretty adventurous.
I
You
still
know,
have her.
you still have her?
But she's changed multiple parts of her body because the
Mm-hmm.
cortex doesn't hold up over time,
Mm.
which is kind of partially why they discontinued it too.
I mean, I guess it
Um,
depends. My cortexes are still holding up pretty well, but again,
well,
I'm also like
as
a
someone who
collector, so I don't.
I dress and undress them
Mm,
like multiple times a week,
mm.
sometimes like 50 times in a day if
Oh, I
they're
see.
my only model.
Mm-hmm.
So she's taken a lot of beatings,
Mm-hmm.
and I've learned to be more careful, of course, also
Mm-hmm.
over time. But some of the areas had really thin plastic, and it broke.
I see. I see. Then I can definitely understand what you're talking about because, like I said,
But
like
like
I'm
if you're having
more.
it on display,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, I'm more of like a collector type, so I find like the outfit that works for my particular girl, and they usually stay in that outfit forever, and they're on
Yeah,
display in like a display case. And usually the only time they come out is if I want to do like any kind of photos for a photo shoot, or if I bring them out for a doll meet. But for the most part, they kind of just like stay in that one pose and the one outfit for like most of the time. So yeah, if you take them out a lot though and dress them out a lot like you're saying, then I could definitely see the wear and tear, getting to a cortex in that respect. That makes a lot more
yeah.
sense.
The thin plastic is a lot more sensitive to it than the vinyl
Mhm.
is.
Right, right.
Because, like again, my Dolphy Dream Girl, she's fine.
Mhm.
She doesn't have any broken arms or legs, but the cortex ended up getting broken arms and legs
Mhm.
because of how much I used her,
Mm.
which I guess is a sign of love too,
Mhm.
but it sucks
Yeah,
to
yeah.
break one of your like favorite dolls.
Right. And so since that was a cortex, that's interesting. What was your first vinyl smart doll that you ended up buying?
My first vinyl smart doll that I ended up buying was actually Liberty.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, my Cortex was actually a Kanata in tea.
Uh-huh.
And my most recent is Monday in cinnamon.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you got the
Um,
Monday one.
yeah, when Danny said he was gonna discontinue the cinnamon Monday,
Mhm.
I basically like pleaded, and my hubby bought it for me.
Yeah, a
uh,
lot of people started doing that as well. Like when Danny started making posts, oh, I guess it was maybe years ago at this point now. But he started making posts that certain dolls are no longer going to be in stock. They're going to start discontinuing. And I remember a lot of people started getting worried at that point, and rightfully so because it was getting discontinued. So people were like
yeah,
buying out dolls like crazy at that point. Because initially, I remember when he first started doing Smart Doll, his and correct me if I'm wrong, but his thing was like his dolls are going to be available all the time. There's no rush. They're just going to be there forever. So if you can't buy it now, it'll be there at a later point.
yeah, and Cinnamon Monday was a frontline girl,
Mm-hmm.
which made it even more like, oh shoot, if she's disappearing,
Right.
who's gonna disappear after her?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
And he did a good job, I guess you could say, explaining, why he had to essentially abandon having all the dolls available at
yeah,
all the time. So it makes sense why he moved over to this kind of new way of doing things that he's been doing it for the past couple of years. Because logistically, keeping stock of all those dolls
Oh
and
yeah.
all those heads and body parts and everything, yeah, that could definitely get real crazy logistically. And because he's a small company with a small team, it's not like he has like huge warehouses to store these things. So it does make sense. So I remember there was a doll that I bought that he was discontinuing at the time, and I definitely snatched her up real quick.
Yeah.
Let me just move Prowess off to the side because it's getting like a pain in the butt to like hold her. Oh boy, she's gonna fall. There we go. Okay, so that's an interesting progression that you went through, but it's not all that uncommon either, you know, for a lot of people
No.
to start off with like smaller type dolls, whether it be a Barbie or it be something like a Monster High or a Bratz, and then like progressively moving their way up, you know, to the more larger size and more expensive dolls. So
And some people actually work downsizing.
yeah, some people do
Um,
that too, like because they just have no space, or they had to move and relocate, and they need like
Like-
smaller collections.
One artist I follow, I think, makes 1/24th scale.
Mm-hmm.
They're tiny. I don't understand how they're able to make a functioning like multi-jointed doll
Mm-hmm.
so small.
Yeah, I've seen like again, I was at a doll meet
I
and
think
they
it's like Tiny Tinkers. I think is one of them.
uh
I don't know if they make like 1/24th or 12,
mhm.
but even just like 1/12 scale is so small.
Yeah, I was at a doll meet once where they brought, I guess you could say it wasn't like a doll per se, but it was like a BJD like dragon. And it was like a really small dragon, but the dragon
Yeah.
had like 3 ball joints to move the neck and like all the ball joints in the appropriate places to move the feet and everything. And I was like, it's so small. Like how do you put this together and like make it move? Like it's so tiny.
Yeah, like I have a couple of pet dolls.
Mm-hmm.
My smallest one, it doesn't have a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a tiny little decorative bird.
Mm-hmm.
You can basically like detach the head and move the tail. That's it.
Okay.
But like even so, it's such tiny parts. Like even taking that doll apart is a
Mhm.
hustle because it's so small.
Mm-hmm.
So people who make like functioning dolls with multiple joints that small, I don't understand how.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of explored like your background and like how you got into the doll hobby and kind of have like an understanding of your progression, when did it change for you from just being a collector and you know collecting these dolls to actually starting to want to make clothing for them? Like how did that start?
When I began collecting Monster High dolls, I was still in grade school, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And we had sewing classes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like basically obligatory in Sweden.
Okay.
We have to do sewing and also woodworking classes. It's
Okay, so
interesting.
it's part of the core curriculum, I guess, that you have to you have to learn.
Sometimes we get to do like kind of we did to get to do like whatever we wanted in the
Mhm.
sewing kind of thing, and I guess I just kind of learned some basic stitching and started like stitching some clothing onto some of my dolls.
Mhm.
The very simplest way to basically start out making clothing for a doll is just say you have a Monster High doll
Mhm.
and a sock and a needle and thread. You can make a form-fitting dress that looks good even without like any major talent or knowledge about making clothing.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I guess got started sewing. I watched a lot of My Froggy stuff.
Oh,
and
my froggy, yeah.
Yeah. She's still going strong, by the way. I watched her today.
Oh yeah, she definitely is.
Um,
She's super popular and
she's
rightfully
rocking
so.
it.
Like she has all these tutorials on how to do this and that, and I remember watching her tutorial on doing what's it called? What do you call those things? A diorama. Where
Mm.
it's like a setting, like for a small
Yeah,
room.
she does also have some smart dolls and do some smart doll things,
Mm-hmm.
which is really nice to see. Um, Although she's stuck in the 1/6 scale, like that's her scale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I watched a lot of her, and I watched some other like doll related YouTubers. I don't remember all of the names of them because it was like almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's hard to
but
find the same people that are still going, because some people have their moments where they go for a year, a couple of years, and then they disappear, or they retire but then come back. So my Froggy is definitely one of those that's been going strong for many many years.
yeah, it's and like uh, it depends on who grows too, I guess. Like
Hmm.
if how you grow mentally and like with what you create. A lot of YouTubers kind of get lost in the void because the people who used to watch them grew up, but the content didn't.
Hmm.
Um, so it depends a lot. Like a lot of the YouTubers who, for example, did like Monster High Dolls role playing TV show things,
Hmm.
they're not doing it anymore because they're not 15 or like 12 anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so you don't really see all of those sticking around.
Is it there's
um,
like a newer generation of doll owners that are picking up that mantle?
yeah, and the few like older ones that keep going with the same thing, they keep their small like community that
Hmm.
wants to keep supporting that even when they grow older. But we all kind of just like move on from content to content quite easily nowadays.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true. So then you were watching different YouTubers and seeing how, I guess, how they customize their clothing for their dolls.
Yeah, both in like simple DIYs like that, and sometimes again customizing in different ways, sewing things, making
Hmm.
things. I made a massive dollhouse out of cardboard boxes for my Monster High dolls.
Hmm.
Um, so I've been like enjoying crafting a lot.
Hmm.
I've always been creative. I've been drawing. I've been doing this and that. Um, so sewing is just also like a natural thing to just move move on with.
Hmm.
Um, I began making some human-sized clothing too, and I also like um, did start bringing some dolls to school when I was sewing and just like trying new things and stuff. Um, and I don't know how it like really progressed because I know that I went quite a while without like sewing basically anything at all.
Okay. But when you
Um,
did, I found that interesting that because you had that sewing class when you were growing up, and then you mentioned that you would bring your dolls, for the sewing. Did you ever have any kind of instance or reactions from your fellow classmates when you would bring in the dolls?
oh, I've been bullied since I was like in kindergarten.
Oh no, that's not good. Kids can be
Uh,
so
I
mean.
Partially because I am bigger than everyone else.
Hmm.
Not in the sense of being fat. I wasn't really fat at all when I was younger. But I have a medical condition, and
Mm.
it made me a lot taller. When I was one, I looked like a 3-year old.
Oh wow, you're pretty big then.
Yeah. Um, so I wasn't able to like. I was able to beat up a kid that was in like third grade when I was still in kindergarten.
Oh goodness. And is this
Um,
something that is I guess, not to get too personal, but I mean like is it still something that is, I don't know, how do you say it properly? Like an ongoing thing? Like are you still a much taller individual like in your older
um,
age?
well, for the Americans, I'm currently 6'1".
Mhm.
I've been 6'1" since I was like 12.
Oh wow. Okay. So you were very tall at a young age then.
Yeah, I had to take hormones and stuff to stop growing too. Otherwise, I'd been like closer to like 7 feet.
Oh wow.
um, it's well, not like maybe not up to 7 feet. I don't exactly know how to translate centimeters and stuff to
Hmm.
feet. Um, I know that my dad is right above 2 meters.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know the
Um,
conversions either. So like, let me see if
yeah,
I can Google it. What is it usually, like meters or centimeters that you would measure in?
do centimeters.
Okay.
Um,
So if I do it like this, so how many
and
centimeters
200,
would you say? 200?
or like 203, but that's very specific.
Okay, so if I were to type in 203, it kind of shoots back at me at like 6 foot 6 inches.
Yeah, I think that's about how tall my dad is.
Wow, that's pretty tall. That's pretty tall. But
Yeah, and
you
I would
know,
have been closer to that if I hadn't taken medicine and stuff
mhm.
when I was younger.
I guess it's
I have
just
other
different, you know?
things too.
It's different
Yeah,
for different people depending on, I guess like how it makes them feel, inside. So everybody takes things differently, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't really say that your current height of like 6 foot, 1 inch, at least in our measurement, I wouldn't say that's too tall. I think a lot of
no,
people are around the 5'11" to 6'1" ish type height, I would say.
yeah, but it's a lot less common in prepubescent age.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That is true.
You don't see many like 12-year-olds being 6 foot tall.
Hmm.
Um, but uh, you know, it's something I couldn't help. But like I've been bullied for that, and I grew up all of my life with undiagnosed autism as well,
Hmm.
and I've been bullied for things related to that too.
Mm.
Um, so I don't know. At a certain like young teen point, I kind of gave up on fitting in.
Hmm.
So I was like, I really like these things. I'm gonna go do these things I like doing.
Yeah. And that, that's what I guess you could say we want to strive to do. It's like you should strive to just be yourself and do what makes you happy. As long as it's not hurting anybody, you should be able to do what makes you feel more you and makes you feel happy. So like, it's just unfortunate that I guess you could say like years ago, like I don't know, before let's say before the 2000s era, people weren't very open about things. A lot of people were like trying to hide like certain aspects of themselves because they were fear of judgment. And I want to say, what I want to say is at least nowadays we as a society are more open to
Yeah.
having people be able to express themselves, the way they want to express themselves, which is a good thing. I think it's definitely an awesome thing. So, you know, it's unfortunate that when you were growing up that happened to you, but in a way you could say, I guess it shaped you into the person you are today. And it's great that you're able to at least openly express yourself now, and show to everybody, what you're all about and what you like to do and all that kind of stuff. Because I know when I was growing up, at the very least, it wasn't very common to see boys, playing with dolls or collecting dolls. And, nowadays, uh, I noticed there are a lot of male doll collectors. It's not like I'm the only one or anything like that. There's actually a lot of us. So
Yeah, some of the
it's
biggest
pretty
doll
awesome.
collectors I've seen are males.
Yeah. And it's pretty awesome. And that's one of the things that I think the internet has brought to us is this collectiveness. So it's like kind of like a double-edged sword. There's some good things about being open and being out there for the whole world to see because of the internet, and then there's bad things about it because then some people just talk with no filters. you know but
Yeah.
it's just I do like the fact that the internet has opened everybody's eyes to many different cultures and experiences and and likes and dislikes all around the world, and people can find more people. It's easier to find more people that are like you or like-minded people that you can have fun and discuss and talk things with, which I think is definitely amazing. Um,
Yeah,
but
and
yeah, going back to
thanks
your
to
original
internet,
topic of doing dolls in high school and bringing them to or whatever. I forgot if you mentioned it was high school or not, but when you would bring them to
uh,
school.
I did bring dolls to school, like in like the first couple of years and in like high school.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Did you have any, by any chance, like when you were bringing them to school for like sewing and things like that, did you have any assistance from like your teachers being like, oh, let me show you how to make something at that smaller scale? Because I would assume that it's harder to make something at a much smaller scale than it is for a human size scale, I guess.
Some things are harder, some things are easier.
Okay.
But I had a very open-minded sewing teacher,
Mm-hmm.
especially in high school. She was very nice and open-minded, um, and like adults did like give me positive feedback,
Mm-hmm.
being like, "Oh, that's a cool doll. I'd never seen a doll like that," and stuff like that. It was a bit empowering in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
um, and like we had like younger people that were gonna start high school come visit like certain like specific days, and we have like showing things off, and like though I had the ability to sit there and sew and display some of the like simple doll clothing I had made,
Mm-hmm.
um, and some of the like younger people thought it was amazing.
Mm.
um, which is also a really great feeling to just like have someone look up to you in anything,
Mm-hmm.
especially as someone who's been like looked down upon by people. um,
Right. It made you feel, good inside that
but
somebody
like
took an
from most of
interest.
my peers, they probably talked a lot of smack behind my back. Some of them told me things like to my face or like talked about me
Mm-hmm.
while they were sitting next to me,
Oh yeah, yeah.
as if
I
I
know what
don't
you mean.
exist.
Yeah.
um, and I say I'm never gonna forget who they were.
Mm-hmm.
um, like I'm not forgiving any of my high school bullies. I'm just an adult about
Mm-hmm.
it. um, like if I meet them now, I'm never gonna be friends with them, but I'll be nice to them.
Right. Right.
um, but that's just because like you bullied me for like over 4 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
That it's hard to get over.
Yeah, and I can
Um,
understand that. It
but
makes
like then again,
sense.
yeah, sure, I understand picking on certain people to an extent. I don't support picking on people,
Right.
but we all judge people, and I know that kids don't really understand what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing. Like I know that I bullied someone when I was younger, and I regret it as an adult,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know it was bullying back then.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, when you're a kid, you're still trying to learn social skills. You're still trying to learn like how to get along and what's right and wrong and things like that. So I mean, everybody in their past has had, one or two things or something that they regretted doing, and and it's just something that you learn as you grow. And you should
yeah,
learn as you grow. Like as you mature, you start picking up, things that, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. This was wrong, or this things like that. So yeah, I mean, nobody's perfect. We've all
but
made mistakes in our past.
like to an extent, I didn't like billboard the fact that I was still playing with dolls when I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's an age when everyone's like, I'm too old to play with
Mm-hmm.
dolls. Especially this being the early 2000s, everyone had better things to do, like the internet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, or like playing Flappy Bird for some goddamn reason.
I mean, I had the same experience too when I was growing up. When when you're a kid, you play with your toys and things. So when I was younger, I was into the Transformers and GI Joe and those kind of toys. And I remember when I was growing up, getting into high school, everybody in my, I guess could say, social circle or my town, most of the boys were starting to get into girls and or starting to get into sports,
Yeah.
and I was just not into either of those things at the time. I was still like
Yeah.
one of those kids that was playing with GI Joes and Transformers. I just wouldn't tell them to my peers because they
Yeah.
would pick on me. They'll be like, "What are you, a child? You're still playing with toys? Like you should be playing sports or something." And I was like, I wasn't really. I mean, I played sports, but I wasn't into it like they were. So I can understand with
Yeah.
that. Like I was still playing with toys and things when I was in those teen years. I still haven't stopped. I still have toys that I buy nowadays.
Now I have expensive toys
Yeah.
I pay for with adult money.
Right, exactly. I ended up buying like a lot of like old GI Joes or Transformers that I wish I had when I was a kid. And my parents didn't have the money at the time to get them, and I ended up buying them now, and I have them in my display case.
Yeah. Yeah, I was collecting Littlest Pet Shops when I was younger.
Hmm.
And I sold off a lot of them, but I kept some for emotional reasons, basically.
Right.
And now I'm like, oh, I regret getting rid of all of those.
Yeah,
Especially because now they're a hot commodity.
right.
At this point.
Some of them could be like worth a lot of money now. That's totally true.
Yeah, and I know that like some of the ones that I don't have anymore were like are things that people now are like
Hmm.
hard to get.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I sold them, and I think I bought some Monster Highs for the money. So like,
Hmm. So it went back into the hobby, so to speak.
yeah.
So since you've learned how to, sew and make things for like clothing for your dolls and things like that, when did it become like something that you were like, oh, maybe I could start a business doing this? Like maybe I can start selling these. Like how did that come to be?
Well, that was kind of when I got into the actual BJD hobby.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of began sewing some items for my doll at the time. I don't have that doll anymore. It was a recast, and I don't support recasts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sewing some clothing for him, and I was in some Facebook groups here in Sweden
Mm-hmm.
for dolls specifically, and got some items sold. I don't have the exact timeline of like how everything went, but I know at a certain point I opened an Etsy shop,
Mm-hmm.
and I listed like 5 items, because that's how you start. You list like 5 random things you've made.
Right.
And I think it was like some crop tops I made, which, by the way, I don't make that specific kind of crop top anymore because I don't have the pattern.
Oh.
I have no clue where that pattern is.
Oh no.
But then also at that time I was hand stitching everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, I was underselling me for the amount of time I put into each item. I will say that much. Like the amount of hand stitches for like a miniature crop top are a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you're unpracticed in sewing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I assume, because obviously I have never opened my own store or sewed anything, but my assumption is that like when you start something, sometimes you don't realize when in the very beginning like how you should like value things or
Yeah.
price things. I can see that being a little difficult because you don't want to, like as a beginner, you don't want to overprice because then you're like, oh, no one's gonna buy it, but then you don't want to underprice because then you're like, oh, well, then I'm just selling things and I'm not getting my effort or materials or time worth in it, and it would be like I guess operating at a loss, so to speak. But when
I
you
will say that legally I was not 18 when I started my shop.
Mm-hmm.
Etsy will not know this. I will not tell it. You know, it's because this was when you could make a PayPal account basically no matter who you were and what age you were.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have my PayPal linked to my Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
Simple way for tiny me to just make some small cash, you know. Um, and I had no plan of it being a job.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, it's a job, but it's not my full-time job.
Mm-hmm. So when you started, it
Uh,
was just something to, I guess, add to your hobby fun, to continue your hobby
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah,
I
kind
see.
of like a fund to get a new doll or to get some materials and
Mm-hmm.
like stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's still kind of like that, but on a bigger scale.
But when you started in the very beginning, though, I find that a very interesting story that you mentioned about, making a PayPal account and an Etsy account at the time. And it's interesting to me because we are nowadays so used to how social media works and how internet shopping works. We're so used to like Amazon Prime, everything's now, like next day
Yeah,
kind of thing. But and I know I said this a lot of times, but what I find really interesting is that in your beginnings, that was also, in a way, the very beginnings of the internet, so to speak, also. So like things like regulations or rules or how to do things was in their very infancy at the time. So a lot of people were doing things, and it was kind of like the wild wild west back then. Like people just did things, and then after the fact, like companies or creators or influencers, social media peoples would learn after time that, oh, maybe it shouldn't be done this way, or maybe we should regulate this or do that. So I find it very interesting that when you started, it was during that infancy time. So you were able to, create your own account and sell your own things to kind of support yourself in the hobby,
yeah.
which most likely probably you couldn't really get away with doing today in today's internet.
No, no. Like especially a thing of like what age you are on the internet.
Hmm.
I tell you, it's a lot harder to lie about it now.
Hmm. Yeah,
No one double checked your age when I was 15. Okay,
Mhm.
like nobody double checked it. Like nobody double checked when I was 11 and got a Facebook account. Now they're like, can we have your ID?
Yeah, now they're very specific nowadays. Like
Yeah, which is good, honestly. Like
well,
young
yeah,
children shouldn't be in certain places online.
yeah, and that's
Um,
something that we only learned, just by doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there are these regulations in place on the internet now because we learned through doing that. Oh, people are getting away with doing this and that, and this is not good for either this individual or that because it's unsafe or something like that. So then they start coming out with new regulations. Like I
yeah,
remember the internet wasn't really around when I was growing up until my like teens, like late teens, like kind of showing my age here. But I remember when I was young, the cool thing, right, for kids to have was a pager. And I don't know if anyone that's watching the stream right now or watching in a VOD later knows what a pager is, but it was like a small little device, kind of like, your cell phone, like it's a small little square device, and you would essentially just dial a phone number, and then that phone number would answer like a like, kind of like a voicemail, and you would just enter numbers like, like a
yeah,
phone number or something, and it would send it to your pager, and you'd look at it and be like, oh, this phone number is trying to contact me, I should call this number back, to like and see who it is. So like your friends would just like, that was like early text messages, because people would then make
yeah.
words out of numbers. Like they would say hello with like, what was it again? It was like 43770.
Boobs.
And like if you would turn it upside down, it would spell hello. And I remember you had to be an adult, like you had to be like 18 or older to get one of those things, because you had to subscribe to like a monthly
Yeah,
plan for the service and things like that. And I was like I was like, well, how old was I? I think I was like 15 at the time, so I was not of age. And I went to this like shady booth in the mall, and I was like, being this shy little kid, I was like, can I get this pager thing? And the guy was just, I guess he just wanted to make a sale or something, and he just sold it to me, and I was like, yeah, I got a pager, and like it was like big like when I was a kid, but it's my only way of understanding like the whole internet phase of doing things when you were younger. That was my version of doing something I wasn't supposed to when I was young.
When I was like, when I got my first cell phone, it was like a Nokia.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get that until I was like close to like at least 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my first cell phone was the Nokia too. I had a Nokia, what was it called? The 5100, I think it was. And like I got that like when I first got my very first job when I was like 18. Went out and I was like, I want this cell phone. And I had nobody to call, mind you. I just wanted it because other people had it. And I was like, this would be cool to have this cell phone.
Yeah, and it's like me and my best friend, we had the same cell phone. And
Mhm.
at the same time, it's like, who the frick am I gonna call except my parents
Right.
and my one best friend?
Yeah, because cell phones back then is not like cell phones today, where you could do so much.
A phone call or a text cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Having a cell phone back then was not the same as having one nowadays. Nowadays, it's like having a computer basically in your pocket, where you could do almost anything. But back then, it was purely just a call.
I was lucky that I was able to have Snake on my phone.
I remember that game.
Like, there's emulators for it for a smartphone where it looks like a Nokia.
Where it looks like an old Nokia phone? Oh my goodness. That's crazy.
It's like, I'm not growing up.
But yeah, we got a little bit off topic, but like, yeah, that's really interesting how when you first got into making your very first Etsy store, how that came to be, and selling things on there.
I actually brought it up, and my Etsy shop was created in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which month, but I was 16 or 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Which, hint, hint, you're not legally allowed to have an Etsy account until you're 18. Okay, don't. Without the parents' consent, don't.
Yeah, we're not trying to endorse people to do things they're not supposed to be doing. It was just
honestly like
it was a different time.
Consent, go ahead, but yeah.
It was a different time, when things were like that were happening.
It might have been like 10 years ago, but it was a very different time. 10
yeah,
years ago.
and that's another wild thing about that is that we say that was 10 years ago, and it doesn't sound like it's a long time, but technology-wise, that's a really long time, considering the fact that you get brand new things like basically every year. There's like a new thing and like a new way of communicating and a new app or a new this or that. Like technology is just moving at such a fast pace that like 10 years ago is a long time.
If you have a 10-year-old computer,
oh yeah,
it's like a potato with a screen.
Yeah, it's pretty much done. Like you need a new computer at that point.
Like if you have a laptop from 10 years ago and you manage to start it, that thing's asking to be like euthanized.
Yeah, it won't even run probably modern operating systems or any kind of apps even. Like it's just not gonna work. So yeah, I mean it was very much so a different time when you started your Etsy and everything and getting started. But progression wise though, because you had that store, and I guess you were able to see that the items that you were making was actually I guess you could say in demand. Like people were buying them,
I could see that they were actually like worth something.
Mm-hmm.
Like someone actually wanted something I made.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like a surprise to most people. Like someone wants something I created.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you haven't sold anything or made stuff for people before, that's an odd thing to like have happen.
Yeah. I can only imagine because I mean I've sold things before, but it's nothing I ever made. It was just like like garage sale or something like that, where something you don't want anymore, and you
That
sell
doesn't
it.
hit the same way.
Yeah, I assume it's not the same, but like I can only imagine that like something that you created with your own hands or your own intellect, if it's like a digital item or product, that it's probably a whole different experience on what it feels like, that somebody wants something that you basically made with your mind and your hands
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So
Yeah, I can see that
it's
my
interesting.
first sales actually happened in 2019, so I was of legal age when I started selling. Um, but like even 2019, it's a while ago,
hmm
technology-wise.
hmm
Um,
Yeah, that's
and
still
also
that's
like
still
what I
4 years.
created then versus what I create now is also leagues in different
hmm
ballparks.
Right, as a creator, as a sewer, like you've evolved or you progressed in your skills and what you offer, as opposed to what you offered in the beginning. I can definitely see that. So I know you mentioned earlier that it was a means to kind of like fund your hobby by selling things, because you noticed that people were interested and they wanted to buy things that you created, and you just kept going as a hobby.
Yeah.
When did it turn into something that you thought could kind of be like a side career? Because I know you said you do have a regular full-time job that you do, but when did you decide that I'm gonna go a little bit further than just a hobby and try to see if I can make this work for me as a maybe possible side career or maybe even a career at some point?
Well, it was before the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
that I like started making more money off of it. And it became more than just sewing and selling for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's about like 2 years ago now that I actually turned it into a legal business.
Mm-hmm.
A heads up is that you don't need to have it as a legal business from the get go.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that come with having a legal business that make it harder, especially if you don't make enough money for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I started making like um, over 3,000 US dollars a month.
Mm-hmm.
No, not a month, not a month. God, a year,
A
a
year.
year,
Okay.
a year. And there's at least here in Sweden, there's tax cap
Oh, okay. Yeah.
for hobby versus like business and stuff and taxes.
Right.
So if you as a person make over about that 3,000 mark,
Mm-hmm.
um, you have to pay retroactive taxes.
Mm.
So if you on the last of December earn $1 over that 3,000, you have to pay taxes for the whole year.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the
Um,
same thing in America. I believe it's like if you sell and it's under a certain amount,
yeah,
then the
then it's
government
fine.
basically doesn't go after you. They're just like
Yeah.
whatever. But if you make over a certain amount, then all of a sudden you start getting into taxes and you have to claim it and you have to
Yeah.
register it with the government and all this other kind of stuff. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I decided that like, okay, I make close to this amount of money. I don't want to mess with the tax system.
Mhm.
So I registered to become a legal company.
Mhm.
However, it's such a small business that it has the same social security number as me.
Oh, okay.
We have a kind of business that is like really small, basically local business thing, where it's just like my social security number and then just 01 in the end.
Oh, that
Um,
registers you as a business person.
yeah, that
Mhm.
registers basically me as a business,
Mhm.
um, which is great for a tiny business like what I am. If I started having employees, though, it might work differently.
Right.
um, but at the moment, that system works for me.
Mhm.
I can still like I know that the amount of money I have in and out in a year, Like without, if I didn't spend any money at all, I'd make over $5,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I spend like at least 2,000 on random stuff like fabrics and dolls and other things.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, some of my dolls are business expenses.
Mm. Right, yeah, I know
Uh,
some people do that. It's pretty much common knowledge that a lot of like small businesses, expense some of the things
yeah,
against the business. Because it can, in a way, it can help. Like for your particular situation, if you're a clothier or atelier or somebody that makes clothing for dolls, you can write off a doll as a business expense because you
yeah,
you would need one, at least one of every size maybe or scale in order to use as a mannequin to make clothing or and
yeah.
to show off clothing on product for certain scale dolls, and that is part of your business and you can use that as a business expense. So
Same thing. Oh, my doll needs a new pair of boobs. Oh, too bad it's a business expense.
yeah, yeah, that's
um,
definitely something that you could do here in the US as well. That I mean, I don't
yeah,
have a small business here, but I've talked to other people and it seems
it's
like it's the
basically a
same thing.
taxes thing. It
Mhm.
basically like exempts a certain amount of taxes.
Mhm.
Um, but it works different in different countries and in like different states sometimes
Mhm.
too. So what I talk about my Swedish business is not the same all over the world. Just
Right, right. But some things are relatable, that some things
yes.
are relatable. And I noticed that Batman has said in chat, she says, "That's how I started funding my BJD habit. It's an addiction now, so much more than a hobby. I made things for other people in the hobby, but I never set up a shop. I only did customs." She goes on to say, "In the US, we had that too. On PayPal, it used to be $10,000. I remember
Yeah.
freaking out that first time when I got that notice or them asking for my social security number. I
Yeah.
was doing really big, I don't know what she says there. I was doing really big go. It wasn't even sales, but I had over 200 people in the go and lots of PayPal money transactions. So PayPal was eyeing me hard."
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it's a certain amount. It's like you were saying that when you breach that certain amount, then the
Yep.
government starts paying attention and they're like, wait a minute. You're making sales. We need a cut of that sales.
Yeah. Same thing like the company like PayPal, for example, they're also like, are you money laundering?
Hmm.
Um, because that was a big thing with PayPal for quite a while, money laundering,
Mm.
because it wasn't really trackable in a way. It's kind of like how Bitcoin can be a
Hmm.
money laundering scheme now.
Hmm.
But like 18-year-old me selling $3 shirts, I swear, wasn't a legal issue.
Right, right. Oh, and
Oh, group
Batman
order.
Jackson clarifies go means group order. Okay, so I guess that makes sense now. I was like, what is go?
But
So,
yeah,
yeah.
doll group orders can get out there in money.
Hmm. Right, especially
um,
when you're dealing with doll stuff. It can get
yeah,
pretty high. It's totally true.
even just a couple of dolls and you're up there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So you mentioned that you were starting your business on Etsy and you were selling things on Etsy. And I know we talked about it at the very beginning of the stream, but now's a good time to talk about it. So, what is it, if you can describe to the audience, in your personal experience, what is it about Etsy that made it so difficult for people nowadays, and your transition from out of Etsy to now having your own website where you sell your own things on that website instead of through a third party like Etsy?
Uh, well, this year Etsy upped their seller cost things, like the fees they take,
Mhm.
and now they take up to like over 10% of a sale
Mhm. That's a lot.
worth of money from the seller.
Mhm.
This is a fee that the customer doesn't really see,
Mhm.
but the seller feels it.
Right.
um, Same thing, they take a listing fee, transaction fee, shipping transaction fee.
Mm-hmm.
I think they take another like kind of like order handling fee.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fees.
Yeah, it's a lot of fees. And there was an Etsy strike earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
I took part in it too, where a lot of sellers was like, Etsy, you have to freaking stop or we're out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really hard to get out of because most of the customers are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like being a seller on Amazon. People go there to buy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or like certain sellers on eBay. It's
Right.
really
So
hard to move out of it because people don't really think about the individual shops all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you order something through Amazon, you just think Amazon,
Right.
not through like the third-party sellers that are in Amazon and selling through them.
Right. Yeah, there are many companies that list their products on Amazon, and those products aren't Amazon products. They're just another
Yeah.
company. But when you buy on Amazon, you're just thinking, "Oh, I bought this thing off Amazon."
Yeah, the same thing goes with Etsy sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a bit less with Etsy, but it's still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the only like complaints I've had about shipping and stuff has been Etsy customers
Mm-hmm.
who basically think that I'm Amazon.
Mm.
I'm not. A heads up.
Mm.
um, a lot of people being like, "Oh, why hasn't it arrived in 2 days?" And it's like you ordered it with stamps as shipping from Sweden to America.
Yeah. It's snail mail, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like the only reason my shipping is reasonable to America for your standard shipping is because it's stamps, it's snail mail.
Mm-hmm.
And like I tell my customers that it's stamped all over my Etsy, but people still don't read.
Mm.
But yeah, it's also a thing of Etsy. They're always on the customer side
Mm-hmm.
if something happens. If there's a dispute, the customer wins most
Mm-hmm.
of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I tell most customers that they can reach out to me and I'm happy to solve it because I don't want issues with higher ups on Etsy. At the moment, I have a restriction on my Etsy account because a Sanrio lawyer
Mm-hmm.
found a rogue meta tag in some of my listings and marked them as Sanrio property.
What?
Yep.
That's weird. Because all your stuff is custom made, like you make them yourself. So
Yeah.
I don't
But
understand why they would claim something.
I managed to have a rogue tag that said Sanrio.
Oh.
And they just claim that without like any second thought. I've tried
Mm-hmm.
to email them. Of course, their lawyer not going to respond to me.
Mm-hmm.
And Etsy is then like, oh, well, you gotta wait at least 90 days then.
Mm.
And I'll not see most of my money for at least like 45 days.
Mm.
But it's really hard to leave Etsy again because all of the customers are there.
Right. And it's just easier to search too, because it's kind of like if you want to look for a certain thing, like Etsy is like your Google, so to speak, of searching for items. So, you just go on Etsy and you're like, I want this kind of a shirt. And then it just shows you all these different kinds of a shirt that's on sale. Versus like if you're just a regular, I guess, shop on the internet and you go on Google, I guess, because Google, whenever you search whatever, the first couple things that pop up is eBay and Amazon searches for that particular item, and then like regular shops, they're on page like 4, 5, 6, as you go down like the thing. So it is harder, and I understand that being on Etsy is just easier, or being on Amazon is just easier to find what you need because it's all centralized in one search engine, so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, like I'm guilty of that too. Like I go to Etsy and buy things too sometimes. If one of the stores has a separate website, I try to look for that. But sometimes it's convenient.
Right.
and that's how a lot of customers find me too, because it's a convenient place to find me.
Right, right. So going back to, I want to touch upon something that you mentioned. I thought was interesting too. Is all these fees they get charged, and you get hit with from Etsy. Now, I have like way back in the day, like I have like an old eBay account where I used to sell some things that I needed to get rid of when I was moving,
Yeah.
from my apartment over to my new home. And I was like, I need to clean out some stuff and sell things. And I remember like pricing things on Etsy. I'm like, oh well, or not Etsy, in eBay. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is only worth like this many dollars. So and I see a lot of people selling it for this, so I'm just gonna make it the same price. But then when I list it, because I was new to eBay at the time, I would go list, and then eBay would be like, oh well, in order to list this, we're gonna take like 8% of whatever sales you make, and then it's
Yeah.
going to cost you this much to put it on our website for 30 days, or something like that. And there was like all these different fees. And then like when you want to mail it, you could mail it on your own, but if you use our mailing service, it's somewhat cheaper, they tell you. But it ends up kind of like, depending on how big or how heavy it is, it may not be cheaper. But
Yeah.
then there's like all these different fees. So I'm assuming that like when you were talking about Etsy fees, you were talking about way more fees than I've heard of before. Like there's all these other fees. I'm like, oh my God, why is there so many?
Yeah. Honestly, why there's so many? They want money.
Hmm. And it's so
'Cause,
high too,
like,
over 10%.
they say that they take a lot of the charges from us, because to improve the website.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen any improvement on the website since I started my shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
go to Etsy every now
it
and then.
doesn't
It's the
load
same Etsy.
faster. It doesn't load faster. The like interface isn't better.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't gain anything. They're like, oh, but you gain this statistic thing. Oh yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't already like have a rough understanding of how my statistics works. Like I don't need to know how many people actually just click on my shop without buying anything. It doesn't help me that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't like add up to amount of money they charge for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like my separate website does that for free.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, and that makes it hard too for you to price out your items, right? Because in my basic understanding of business, because I don't know too much about business, but my understanding of business is when you sell a product, right? You got to account for the materials that you use to make the product, however much
Yeah.
that costs, and obviously the labor time. The packaging that you use, like whether it's fancy packaging or just an envelope, you still have to pay for the envelope.
Yeah.
You still have to pay for the styrofoam peanuts, or the bubble, the little bubble packaging that you put in there, or even just the regular cardboard paper that you put in there just to stuff it with.
Yeah.
Like you got to factor that in, and then you got to factor, like, I guess, the time it takes for you to make the marketing pictures, like take the picture, edit it, or whatever, any kind of like a background that you use for your backdrop of your pictures. Like there's all these different things that you have to pay for in order to just get it off the ground, and you have to factor all that in, like when you make your pricing.
For a lot of things, you have to, for example, also predetermine what the shipping cost is.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have a basic preset for the shipping, where sometimes it's a bit less than what the customer pays for, but sometimes it's more, and it kind of evens out on my end.
Mm-hmm.
Which is to make it a bit easier for me and for the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's added fees with that, and then it's like, oh, should I charge anything for what it costs to go to the post office? Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot
Yeah.
of random things that you don't think about that could be deducted or added into a
Right.
price for like specific goods.
Right. And yeah, that's another thing that you just brought up, which is very good, is that, you still have to get the products to the post office too, right? So, you got to factor in, drive time or whatever gas that you use to get there. It doesn't sound like it could be a lot, but I can imagine it adds up over time. Like if you're making daily trips every single day or once a week trips or whatever, that will add up over time. I could definitely see that. And then you got to also factor in all these multiple Etsy charges that they put on top of that. And then how do you find out the proper way to gauge a price for something when once you factor in all those things? It's got to be very complicated to a certain point.
Yeah, in the beginning, I kind of went off what other people charge.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I sometimes look at what other people charge, but I also know that like what I make and what they make, it's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
How they make something and how I make something might be very different, even though the result looks similar.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really calculate a lot of my work time. I don't. I should calculate it a lot more and charge a bit more for it. But I kind of want to be a kind of shop that I sell things that I would buy.
Mm-hmm.
And after a certain point, there's like a sum of money that I don't want to go up to for certain things. But to keep something like that, I sometimes have to do certain things differently from some other shops that charge more.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with the Etsy fees, for example, I didn't really think about the Etsy fees a lot in the beginning because it was more of like, oh, nice, some money.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the fees a lot more, I've recently also like upped the prices on my Etsy in combination with when they buffed up their fees.
Mm-hmm.
To even it out more for me because I'm still worth as much as I need to get paid for what I do.
Right. And sometimes
like,
people don't realize that. It's a sad truth that sometimes people just don't realize that if the Etsy prices go up, then as a seller, your prices naturally have to go up or else you're going to be operating at a loss, essentially.
Yeah.
So, it's just unfortunate that not everybody realizes that point of view. And then sometimes they get mad at you for that, which is weird.
Yeah, like I've recently had one customer that's left a bad review.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out of my way to try and like solve an issue because the post didn't get their package sent out to them. It just returned it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to repurchase shipping. But to make sure that it got to the customer safe, I actually repurchased it as with tracking instead of the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So I already went at basically a loss.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a very small order.
Mm-hmm.
But I did so to please the customer, but the customer still wasn't pleased, so can't do much about that.
Right. Unfortunately, you can't please everybody. It's just an unfortunate thing.
But it does hurt to get a bad review.
Mm-hmm.
On Etsy, for example, there's a lot of like, you will get more features as long as you don't get like anything under 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
You're likely to get more sales as long as nothing is under 5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
One bad review I got lowered my score point by 0.1, which doesn't sound like a lot, but to go from 4.9 to 4.8,
mm-hmm.
it's a quite big jump in like how people look at my shop.
Mm-hmm. That's another thing that I think is unfortunate is that they give you a rating system, like what is it, like 5 stars at the most, right?
Yeah.
So the weird thing I find that's interesting is that you're saying that they give you more features the higher your rating is and the higher the stars is. But what is strange is that it seems to me that like it isn't a 5-star rating anymore. It's basically you have the 5-star or you don't. It's not like if you have 3 and you're the middle ground, you get middle features. It's kind of like you either have 5 stars and you get all the features, or you have less than 5 stars and you just get no features, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a little misleading. Like, why not just make it a good or bad instead of just like making people think that there's an in between that they can improve to the 5 stars, but really it's not there.
Yeah, and it's also like it's based on the customer, and if the customer doesn't want to elaborate more than just giving a random 1 star and saying nothing, the seller can't do anything about it. Like, I can make a public statement. I did so on the 1 star review I recently got because I wanted to explain my side. But like, even if it's just like randomly, like sometimes people just leave 4 star reviews, don't say anything, they don't think anything's bad with the product, but they just leave a random 4 star review. And the thing a lot of those people don't understand, I think, is that 4 star review lowers the chances for that business to make more sales. Etsy will probably not tell you this specifically, that they work on the star system, but 5-star shops, they're gonna show up most of the time if you just randomly like show up on Etsy.
Right. So like if I go on Etsy now and like I type in like doll shirts, the top results are all going to be 5-star stores, basically.
5 or like 4.9. That's gonna be the majority. It's kind of like how YouTube has some shadow system of how they recommend channels.
Oh yeah, definitely. The YouTube algorithm, which I haven't bowed down to yet. Like there's like this whole thing about YouTube, which is the same thing. Like if you make your thumbnails a certain way, or if you title your videos a certain way, they promote it more. They won't tell you that they do that, but it's pretty much proven. Like if you look at all the top videos, it's pretty well known nowadays that there's a lot of people that do clickbaity videos just to get you to go into it, and sometimes the video is not even about what you saw on the thumbnail. So yeah, YouTube has its own ups and downs with that too.
Yeah, and like all the bigger websites use those kind of things. Like it's a lot. But onto like my personal website, is because I've bumped up my costs on my Etsy. My website has the base prices without the Etsy fees. So the customer gets to pay 10% less, but I still get the same amount of money.
Right. Because now you're not incurring that third-party fee anymore. So the customers will see, it'll look like you're selling cheaper now.
On my website it looks like it's $9, but if you go to Etsy, it's like over $10 or something,
Right. And it's cheap. Like, I'm assuming that, and obviously I'm asking you to tell us to a certain extent. Obviously, not all. You don't have to divulge all the information, but I'm just saying that because you don't have to incur those Etsy fees anymore by hosting your own website and your own online shop, that still incurs a fee on its own, but just not to the extent that Etsy's charging, and that's why you're able to lower the price on there, right?
Well, I do pay a like subscription for my website. A certain subscription that allows me to host it as a shop with PayPal as a payment option. But based on like the amount of sales I make on Etsy compared to that and the possible PayPal fees, I still earn more from my website than from Etsy if my sales roll in properly.
And it helps out the customers anyways, because then the customers are not incurring that extra Etsy fee that's on top of it. So I mean, it's a win-win situation. So the only problem now is basically just getting word out that you have your own website now, and that's where to find you.
Yeah, I try to like link it everywhere and try to nudge all of the people and being like, there's always a 10% discount compared to my Etsy shop.
Right. And for everybody watching the stream right now, or watching this at a later date on the VODs, you can see it on the screen at the bottom below Tyler that, it says down there.
somewhere.
is the website. Yeah, for LikeNoOtterShop.com. So if you want to check out, their Tyler's stuff, you can definitely go there and check it on that website. I mean, you could also find him at the on Etsy, but as we just discussed, it'll be cheaper for you and better for the
Yeah.
shop also if you go to their website. So it is on there.
It's also,
I will put it in the description of this video as well so that people will have access to your website.
my system is also that new clothing come up on my website like sometimes multiple weeks before they end up on Etsy.
Mm-hmm.
So that the people who go to my website have priority.
Right. So they get first dibs basically on new things. Okay.
Yes. They get access to the new items, and the items that don't sell end up on Etsy, basically. This is, again, to encourage people to go to my website first, because that's the main place I want to be selling.
Now, obviously, there was like a learning curve to learn how to post and list items and sell items on Etsy.
Yes.
But moving from Etsy to having your own website and your own, your own thing that no longer there's this third party involved. How difficult was it moving from a third party site that handles a lot of the whole internet, layout and all that kind of things and taxes and all that, and moving away from all that and to doing your own website? Was it a large learning curve doing that?
Well, even in Etsy, I still have to do my own taxes. Because the government is still like, oh, we know how much taxes you need to pay us. How much do I need to pay? You'll have to figure that one out yourself. It's like, okay, thanks. But it wasn't that hard, actually. There's a lot of website creating platforms out there that help a lot. Again, I've been on the internet for a long time. I've done a lot of digital creative work and other creative work, so I kind of know a lot about making something that's pleasing to the eye. So my website is... I have not programmed my own website. I will tell you that much. I can't program.
Oh, okay.
I use a hosting service, and it's Wix. They're not a sponsor at all. But they have a really great function that's basically kind of like you just get to copy and paste and place things wherever you want them, and it works wonders for me because that's how my brain works. And I started with free websites. Like, you don't get a custom domain that much, but you still like can open your own website and stuff. And I don't know if you can sell through that specific way on Wix on the free version, but it's not that hard to set up. And if you've made like any kind of listings, basically anywhere, is quite easy to do on your personal website. In my case, for example, I suddenly don't have to name all of my articles, basically like BAD, Smartall, SD, sweatshirt, top, sweater, t-shirt, crop top, using all the search words in the title just to get picked up by the algorithm. While on my personal website, I can be like black sweater. And that's it, I don't have to throw in all of these other search terms that people are going to use to find it.
Okay. Like, you don't have to use a lot of tags or something like that.
Yeah, I kind of use a category system, but not like tons of tags kind of system. Because I personally just find that like overbearing.
Yeah, it can be, because we do the same thing with YouTube. Like, when I post a video, you there's a section to put like tags, so that when people go search things, like those words that you put in there will come up on the algorithm, things like that. So yeah.
Or if you've ever bought anything from like Wish or AliExpress, the title of the items you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
If you've ever like read those titles, it's like a mile of just
Yeah, yeah.
random words,
Yeah. So that
sometimes unrelated to what they're
right,
selling.
so that the algorithm picks it up. It gets kind of ridiculous how people are like, doing things like that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you have to do that, and that's the only way you get noticed is just by putting all these random things in there. I mean, like I said,
Yeah.
it's the same thing for YouTube. So in that aspect, I can kind of relate to what you're saying, because with YouTube, in a way, you're selling yourself, and your videos, and whereas you're selling actual products, but
Yeah.
the way you reach out to people is the same. You still use tags, you still use keywords, so
Yeah, like to market myself on Instagram, I still have to use a lot of tags.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One feature with Instagram that's great and a plague at the same time is just that they autofill some tags.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had people reach out and be like, "Oh, but it's not this doll in the picture," and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Yeah, because Instagram autofilled my tag." When I just want to write Minifee and it's like, no, it's Minifee Ren, and I'm like,
Mhm.
no, this is not specifically
Right. Yeah,
that sculpt.
if you don't pay attention, it like to like as you're typing and clicking, it just autofills certain things, and like I
Yeah.
could see that it gets annoying. Definitely.
Same thing, like if you misspell a tag one time,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna autofill it misspelled every freaking time.
Yeah. That's
It's
so true.
annoying.
It is. It's very annoying.
I have that happen multiple times, and I'm like, it's too late to change it now. It's not gonna be picked up either way.
Right. So now that we have like your business, and you created Etsy, and now you've moved on to have your own website, so what goes into deciding, like how do you decide like what your product lineup is going to be? Because I notice when I peruse your website looking at your different items, you have a wide variety of things that you sell. It's not just like tops or pants, like you have all these different things. So how do you, as a creative person, decide, what you want to make your store like what kind of products you want to fill it with?
Well, first I try to focus on clothing that I would want,
Mm-hmm.
or that I would want for my dolls.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I go based on like what customers request. Like I've had an influx of people being like, "Oh, do some Mori girl stuff," and I tried to dabble in some Mori stuff. It's not a style I've worked a lot in, so it's not that much of it in my shop.
Mm-hmm.
But to a certain extent, it's like, "Ooh, that's a cool idea. I'm gonna do that." Or that fabric looks stunning. I'm gonna do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it is kind of clothing I would make. You can find like a style theme through most of my shop.
Mm-hmm.
There's at least some styles that are flowing through most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things is that I have this one fabric that is very well loved by people.
Mm-hmm. I could see is that the bat symbol on there that I see, or is it just regular? Oh, it's just a regular bat.
It's a regular bat.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pastel goth theme, and pastel goth has been big for a while.
Mm.
And I like that aesthetic too, so I do some things with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also play around. Like some things are just fun to make.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you see a large amount of a certain kind of item, that's probably because it's more fun to make.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you see like a lot of sweaters, that's probably because they're a little bit more fun to sew than like jeans.
Mm-hmm.
Like a pair of denim pants, they're great for the doll, but they're kind of boring to sew.
Mm. So that that makes sense. I can understand that you would want to sell things that entice you, and things that you like. I remember Danny Chu once told me once, when he started making smart dolls, was that he wanted to make a doll for him, like
Yeah.
and a doll that he particularly liked. Like there were other doll companies that he liked, but they didn't. Those doll companies didn't offer certain things that he was looking for in a doll. So then he was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna make my own, and I'll make it the way I like it, and make it for me generally." So you're essentially what you're saying is the same thing. Is that everything that you put on your shop is things that is to your liking and what you would like to see on a doll, and things like that. But have you ever, or I shouldn't say have you ever, but was there ever a time that you kind of got like tempted to make something just because it's just the in thing for a lot of people and that it would
Yes.
sell?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Certain items I like kept remaking because they kept selling.
Mm-hmm.
Or that I've seen a lot of creators make something in a certain direction. I sometimes lean a bit more in that direction
Mm-hmm.
because I know that that's where customers are leaning at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't try to straight up copy anyone.
Mm-hmm.
If anything looks very close to someone else's design, I didn't mean to copy anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I probably haven't even seen that creator's item.
Right, because there's just so many items floating around.
Yeah, and certain like clothing are just like more popular at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you see more cute blouses and like shorts in the summer, yeah, a lot of them are gonna end up looking similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just only so much you can do with a pair of leggings, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And if I end up having the same fabric as a different creator, that just means we have the same taste.
Right, yeah.
Because a lot of my fabrics are from like different shops, and some of them are like locally here in Sweden. And if someone else in a different country has the same fabric, I,
Right,
you know,
right. There's nothing you could do.
I don't know where to get it. Like,
but it's and that makes sense. Like I totally get that because when you go to the store, I mean, how many stores carry denim jeans? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can only make a denim jean in so many different ways before you start
like if a certain
having them
color is
similar.
in fashion,
Yeah.
if a certain color is in fashion, if it's like a season where deep red is currently in fashion,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna see that in every clothing shop.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Basically, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe not on the same item, but they're gonna be similar.
Right.
A lot of them are gonna be close to each other.
Yeah, there's like the it color of the season or like the it style kind of thing. So yeah. So making all these items now and having your shop, does it ever come to a point where you end up finding yourself having like, I guess what's the appropriate word to say? Is like, I guess, seller's fatigue? Like, do you ever get like tired from making either the same item or just making items in general for the shop to fulfill, like, I guess, a certain quota so that you can either pay bills, or maybe you're looking for a particular doll that you want to get in the future, so you're trying to make more sales? Like, does it ever get like tiring, like to a point where one day you're just like, oh, I don't feel like making anything today?
I do get burnout like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like there can sometimes be multiple weeks where I don't sew.
Mm-hmm.
As long as an item isn't listed as made to order,
Mm-hmm.
I have it in storage. So even if I'm on a like sewing vacation, I might still sell things and ship things out.
Mm.
Because that's not like the hard and annoying part sometimes.
Right.
It's hard to be creative like all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of my free time sewing because it's fun, but if I don't feel like it, I'm gonna sit and play Minecraft or
Mm-hmm.
something. And that's like to balance it out, because I also have another full-time job, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to constantly, juggle things and make sure that I can do my actual job and do the business, but also not like run straight into a brick wall.
Right.
um,
Oh, we have a comment in chat from
yeah.
Shiki Katana says, it reminds me of sellers accusing others of copying their designs, etc., when the designs may be already used for human fashion.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, and I'm scared of getting accused of something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I take inspiration from a lot of places, and sometimes I don't remember where I got the inspiration from.
Mm-hmm.
And since the dolls are humanoid,
Mm-hmm.
most of the clothing is based on something that a human has already worn in human size.
Mm.
Um, so if two people see the same design from a human and make it like similar time frames,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't copy each other. They copied a real life, like real human sized thing,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point, is it copying still because it's just very miniature? It doesn't impede on that person's
Mm-hmm.
sales.
Right.
It's a weird thing. Um, Also, being like an artist, both physically and digitally, it's a lot of people accusing others of like stealing art styles.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's no such thing as stealing an art style. I will add
Mm.
that's my opinion, but just because Picasso made cubism popular doesn't mean and nobody else is allowed to paint that way.
Right. Right. And that's the way it is generally for everything, though, right? Like, it's not just art style or
Almost
clothing
everything
designs.
we make is
Right.
influenced by someone else.
Exactly. Like storytelling, like the most basic thing, like the structure of a story, telling a story. You know, you have your what do they call it? Like the Shakespearean style or the
Yeah,
Arthurian style or the biblical style. Like, you know, everybody has these things like an origin story for a superhero. You're not copying, it's just an origin story. Like everything has its own little flair. Nothing is 100% original, you know, like
yeah,
you're just building upon and building upon, you know, something that's pre-existing. So it gets to a point, at least nowadays it's getting to a point where everybody's like, oh, that's like this and this is like this, and then people are jumping on each other's throats, you know, saying that like, oh, you're copywriting me or you're copying me, and this is what do they call it, that intellectual property, like, you know, like stealing.
yeah,
And it's getting a little too excessive. Like there's a certain point, then at that point it's like everybody's stealing then, because the very first person
yeah.
that made a skirt, like back in, like, I don't know, like the 800 BC, like what are we all copying from
Like
that person? Like
the first time someone wrapped a hide around their waist, you know,
right.
like
Like
um,
it's starting to get ridiculous now. Like obviously something is originated from another thing, but each person's take on it has its own little flair, and that's what makes it,
yeah,
you know, unique. Yeah, like
yeah,
Shiki says in chat, imagine not being able to make Smart Doll because Dolphy Dream exists.
yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah,
Um,
it's
Similarly to
exactly
that,
true.
like I have seen sellers start selling certain items that are very similar to something that was a bestseller of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I am not going to go out and accuse them of anything because I could have done the same thing without knowing anything, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, for example, I know that I was one of the first to use a specific kind of fabric for some t shirts,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of fabric kind of caught on.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's cool to be like in the front line of a trend. I don't credit myself as like the owner of a trend or some shit, but I I know that I was one of the first in the doll clothing community to start making that
Mm-hmm.
because I looked around at what everyone else was doing before I listed those items.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So yeah, it's just crazy, like how, you know, people are, and again, this goes back to what I said in the beginning, like the internet is just a blessing and a curse at the same time, because everything is so easily accessible to you, and then that's cool. But then at the same time, because everything's so easily accessible, everybody's like now like easily like accusing people now,
Yeah.
and jumping on other people saying, hey, you stole this, or you stole this, or you said this, or you did that. And like, yeah, it's just, it's a blessing and a curse. And we're still, as a society, I think, still trying to learn how to navigate, you know,
Yeah.
social interactions with people online, so to speak. Because one thing we have to remember is that when you talk to somebody online, like you and I are talking right now, I'm in New Jersey in the United States, and you're all the way in Sweden, you know?
Yeah.
So like, before, when I was growing up, something like this didn't even exist, to be able to talk and make friends like across the world. And when you talk to people online, you forget that when you're talking to somebody, they may not have the same upbringing and values or culture or mannerisms that you do, because they're from somewhere else. So
Yeah.
we as a society are still trying to, I guess, learn how to interact with each other, you know, online, I guess you could say. It's getting
Yeah.
better, it's improving, you know, as time goes by, but it's a learning process.
In the same way, people who, for example, leave bad reviews on businesses and stuff that are small,
Hmm.
they wouldn't say any of those kind of mean things some of them say to the person who made its face.
Right, right.
But as an online review where nobody knows who you are,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah,
um,
people are using that anonymity to their advantage, you know.
yeah,
And you know, the anonymity is there so that you could feel safe and, you know, keep to yourself and have your own private life separate. But then it's not a license to go around and start, you know, bad mouthing and accusing people either. Like that's just a wrong use of your anonymity, I guess you could say.
yeah, I have been targeted by online hate previously too,
Hmm.
and it's not fun.
Hmm.
Um, but like people don't realize kind of that what they say can be personal to someone
Hmm.
else, even though they're not like feeling like it's personal to them.
Right, right.
Um,
And as a seller like yourself, or as a YouTuber like myself, like a public face, you know, some people, they forget that, like, you know, it's a real person that you're sending these messages to,
yeah,
with real feelings, you know. And when you say those things, it'll hurt that individual. But the thing that they don't realize is that, because their anonymity, the only person that it affects is you, is the person being hurt. Because if you try
yep,
to, like, I guess you could say, if you try to talk to that person or reason with that person, you know, they can easily just be like, delete that account, make a new account, and then start all over again, you know, and no
yeah,
repercussions are going to happen on their end. But you, as the person being attacked, you still have that. You're
yeah,
still feeling that, whereas the other person on the other side, you know, can just start over, and there's no repercussions to them, because nobody knows who that person really is.
yeah,
So it's just, it's a vicious cycle, this whole internet thing.
yes.
It's crazy. So, uh, we could go on and have like a whole other discussion just on that alone. But going back to like the dolls and the clothing. So you know, we talked about like the fatigue process, but where and we touched a little bit upon this, but where would you say that you get your creativity from? Like, what inspires you when you want to make something new? Is it like, could it really be anything, or do you have a particular thing like you get inspiration from, like a TV show or a particular magazine that you look at, or is it really just off the cuff, and like one day you're just like, "Ooh, this is a good idea." Like and then you make it and put it on your store, kind of thing.
It's a bit random.
Mhm.
Sometimes I take screenshots of random outfits I see, like online, just
Mhm.
saving them as like you're saving them in case I want to look at them for inspiration.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes it's a certain like pattern I have. like, ooh, this one sweater pattern, I think I'm gonna make something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And some days it's a certain fabric that's kind of calling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes when I start, I just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of just almost automatic that I go like, no, that fabric is gonna work with this, and just keep working on it.
Mm-hmm.
One way I do this is that I cut out a lot of my fabric pieces beforehand. So, like at the moment, I have just a pile of pre-cut fabric
Mm-hmm.
that is ready to be sewn.
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever I feel like sewing, I start grabbing things from that pile and I start sewing it. And then things end up in two different piles, which is either like finished
Mm-hmm.
or needs hand stitching. And then once I'm done stitching with my sewing machine, I usually end up doing the hand stitching parts.
Mm-hmm.
Hand stitching is not as fun sometimes. Just stitching on or pressing on buttons is not enjoyable all of the time.
Mm.
But I know I have to do it to finish an item to be able to take pictures and sell it.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also a different creativity for whenever I should or wanna take the product pictures. Because it's a whole thing. I have to take dolls apart, I have to undress them and redress them over and over again, and take pictures from multiple angles and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I don't need every angle I take the pictures from, but I like it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like weird to just like take one picture and then be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I personally like to look at multiple pictures of an item to make sure that it's correct, like
Mm-hmm.
what I want.
I do want to say that I like that about your shop, is your product pictures, because sometimes when like I guess the most easiest place to talk about is like Amazon. Like sometimes I'll shop on Amazon and they just give you the product picture, but it's only from one view. So you just see it like
it's
this one view, and you're like, well, what does the rest of it look like? Like,
it's from one view, and it's like a white background, or it's like photoshopped into a background.
Yeah.
You're like, I have no idea how this looks
Yeah.
in real life.
Exactly. So
like this is a PNG.
Exactly. And that's what I like about your shop too, is that when I browse through your shop, I can see that like, oh, so this is what it looks like on the doll from head on. And then this is what it looks like from the back, and then the side, and then like I noticed that you take some shots that are kind of like diagonally looking up, or sometimes diagonally looking down, to show off certain features. And I think that's that's really awesome that you do that, because not all shops do that. And that really plays into the whole thing that you said earlier about, making things that you would like to buy, and the quality that you would expect in something that you would buy. So when you're posting product pictures on your shop, it's also awesome that you're posting it in the views that you would like to see an item too, because you are also not only a seller, but you're a shopper as well.
Yeah, I buy from other sellers a lot, or like I try to limit it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I have clothing from multiple other shops, both
Mm-hmm.
from small Instagram sellers and from like Elite Doll World,
Mm-hmm.
which basically everyone with a smart doll has clothing from.
Yeah, they're a big shop that a lot of people know about.
Yeah. But like certain clothing items need to be seen from different angles to know like how they fit in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
For example, things that show off cleavage on a certain bust size.
Mm-hmm.
At least I find it very helpful to see it from like a side top view or something,
Mm-hmm.
just to know like how much it's actually like.
Right, like how
showing
much
off.
the cut like falls down, kind of thing.
Yeah, because just head on, you just see like a tiny thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see it from more of a top view, you might see like even more of
Right.
the chest.
Right. Yeah, that's something
And
that
some
I
people
noticed
don't
with
want that, or want it,
Right, that's something I noticed with something I bought recently. I recently bought like a month ago a new doll. It was like an A-Zone doll, and I only have the default outfit, so I went and I bought a new outfit for that doll from the same company. But I remember the product photos only showed the front side and the back side. And those enough where it's like, oh, I like this outfit and whatever, and I'll buy it. So I bought it. And then when I put it on the doll, it's the exact same thing that you just mentioned, that the way that the shirt falls on the doll and showing off the bust size from the product pictures, it looks like it covers pretty much most of it, and you just kind of see like, neckline or whatever. But when I see it in person on the actual doll from an upwards kind of point of view, it really shows a lot more than you could see in the product photos. And I was like, oh, this is a little bit more showy than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and like some people really don't want that,
or
some people really want it. There's always the two like ends of it,
right?
Because some people collect these dolls and they want to show off the fact that some of them have gigantic boobs.
Right.
Like I'm pansexual myself. Like I like a nice pair of titties, but I don't always want to show those off on my dolls.
Right. No, that makes sense. But like I said, that I think that's a great thing that you do with your website too, is that you give multiple angles, and it's not just the front and the back. Like you give like other angles that really show off like how it looks on the doll, and I think that's really cool that you have that on there. So
yeah, and I try to pose my dolls like a little bit differently every so often too. They don't just like stand there like T-posing.
Right.
Or like just stand there this typical,
I fall victim to that though. Like I always find like if you look at my Instagram posts of like pictures that I do of my dolls, like my favorite pose is something that I just kind of copied off from Danny Chu. Like he kind of poses his dolls in a certain way, and I really like the way he poses them. So like a lot of my photos kind of mimic the posing that he does for his dolls. So like I kind of fall into that trap of using the same pose over and over and over. And I don't know, maybe that's because I personally just have a lack of creativity in just knowing how to pose them, or if it's just more so that I just prefer it. Like I just kind of like that look or something.
I struggle a lot with like the fact that they have two hands and need to be doing something with both.
Yeah.
So I usually always end up with one of them doing this all the time. Like this, or holding their hair or something, just having one hand up here somewhere. And because they show off garments, usually the other arm is a bit more stretched out.
Right.
For example, like if it's a long sleeve, I want to be able to show off the fact that it is a long sleeve.
Right. And how like far it falls. Yeah.
Yeah. So slightly more just showing off the fact that it's a really long sleeve sweater, while this other arm is just freaking chilling up here, touching her hair.
Right. So I have, for the viewers, to show those that are watching, a couple items from your shop that I would like to, talk about and discuss. So if you can kind of like describe to everybody, what we're looking at here as we go along. So let me change the views here so that people can see. Where is it? Okay. So our first product here that we're going to talk about is your princess dress. So we have here. So if you can just kind of explain like, the creative process, like how you came up with the idea for this, and why you wanted to make it for something on your shop that you would sell, like this particular item at least.
Yeah, this is basically demon princess dress. It's very cutesy, but if you look at all the symbols, it's suddenly a different theme. I struggled a lot with that specific fabric actually, because it's a very thin and airy fabric, which is great for doll clothing. But I struggled with it because I'm not used to that specific kind.
Is it harder to sew through because it's so thin or something?
It can be, but also like depending on where you put it, it can be slightly see-through.
Oh, okay.
But I managed to like work around that with this garment because I made most of the bust in white, which I also thought would match. Again, pastel pinks and whites are very commonly seen together, and that's because they're pleasing and like have this cute vibe. And specifically, princess dresses are very fun to make. You can play around a lot with the sleeves, a lot with like where the panels are on the chest, and lace and buttons and everything. So this specific one has multiple different kinds of lace. I think it's like 3 or 4 different kinds of lace just on this dress. And small things, even just like decorative buttons by the neckline.
Yeah, I noticed that.
They add a lot of depth and kind of add some realism, even though they don't even work. They're just there to look good.
Right, they're non-functional but stylish.
Yeah. Then there's the I bought the lace part that's by the bottom of the chest, the like pointy one. I bought that one specifically because I wanted to use it on the bottom of corsets and the top of dresses, because it has that like feeling of like an old-timey corset kind of, and has some decorative details.
Yeah, I noticed that with the I can't really tell from the picture, but like it's got like a little purple embroidery on it, and gold embroidery or yellow embroidery on top.
Yeah. So it's a multicolored embroidery in like purple and goldish colors.
Right.
And that part specifically is actually hand stitched on, while basically everything else is sewn by machine. Because I wanted it to be placed specifically, and I didn't want the seams to be visible on the embroidery part. So for stitched on like embroidery details, I have to hand stitch and make sure to make the seam stitching, look cute from the outside. Then there's always some details I added to make it like hidden and stuff, and the choice of what thread I use when I hand stitch can also like hide it more or less.
Right. So like if you want to, my understanding is that if you wanted to hide it, you'd kind of pick a color that's similar to the fabric so you kind of can't see it. And then vice versa, if you want it to be shown, like then you pick something that pops out, I guess.
Yeah. If I'd really want to, for example, if I want the decorative golden seams, I could use a golden thread and just stitch seams to make them look decorative.
And is that something that you would do by hand, or would you do that with the sewing machine?
For most decorative seams, I'd do that with a sewing machine because my hand stitching is not that's like pretty.
Oh, I see.
I could do some hand embroidery, and I do some things hand stitching, but like for straight stitches and stuff like that, I always use a machine because I suck at that by hand.
Well, I think this dress looks awesome. Like I like the design, especially of the chest piece. Like I like that that design that you have there with the lace and definitely that little pointy part down here. It really does, like you said, it kind of gives off that kind of old time like corset kind of look.
Yeah, it adds a little bit of that princess look that I wanted to like give with it. I liked to do the contrast thing with this one where it's like demonic symbols on a cute princess dress.
Right, it's like
you frolicking through the forest, but at the same time you're like, what?
It's like two opposing things basically in one item.
And that's probably why the pastel goth theme is quite popular. It's very gothic, but it's like bright pastel colors.
And this one is still currently available in your shop, I'm assuming? It's still there.
It should be available because I don't think I've gotten an email about it being sold yet.
So yeah, those of you that are watching it, if you're interested in this is still up on the shop.
Yeah, and I am currently running a sale in spite of Etsy because Etsy is being meanies.
Oh, so can you explain that to people watching? Like, what kind of sale do you have going on in your shop right now?
At the moment, most clothing items are at 10% off. from the like baseline price I have on my website.
Mm-hmm.
Some items are at 15, 20, and a very few select are up to and slightly over 35% sale.
Mm-hmm.
Those are mainly like items that I need to clean out.
Mm-hmm.
Either B grade things, which is basically like if you buy from Smartall, it's basically chaos.
Okay.
B grade is like it's not perfect, it might be unfinished, and for some of the clothing blind bags, like Smartall says, you might be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a very cheap way to get some fixer-upper items.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah. So essentially, you have your own version on your shop of like a chaos system.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Basically.
Okay, and then we have like another item that we're going to show off to everybody, which is this one here called the Butterfly Dancer Suit. So what led to the creation of this particular piece?
It started with realizing that I could put sleeves on swimsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And be like, that looks so much like a ballerina outfit, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like the leotard and like some mesh poofish sleeves, you know?
Right.
And it's kind of like evolved from that. I made a couple of these in like different styles.
Mm-hmm.
This one specifically, I got a very, very limited amount of the sleeve fabric,
Mm-hmm.
which it doesn't really show in this picture, but in certain areas there's blue and purple butterflies.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, but it was really hard to get a good picture of where the butterflies were.
Hmm. I think I see one of them like right by the vitiligo mark that's on there. I think there's a pink one. It looks like
Yeah,
maybe right here in the corner.
might. Then there's also a stitched on little butterfly button
Mm.
to kind of tie the sleeves in with the rest of the bodysuit.
Mm.
And as for like the bodice color, I went with something that would work with and kind of complement the sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
The sleeves are kind of like poofing out there, but at the same time kind of discreet, as because the butterflies aren't like very bright and opaque or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the bright purple of the body kind of pops next to those sleeves.
Right.
Same thing with the black lace on the edge of the sleeves was also a decision of like, this is gonna pop, and I wanted something at the edges of the sleeves that's not just a cuff.
Mm-hmm. Right, so that you could kind of like, I guess you could say, you could tell where the end is.
Yeah. That's not just a big open sleeve, because I wanted that like slightly gathered by the wrists. That gets, that gives that poof feeling. Otherwise it'll just look kind of like bell bottoms. And
right.
the vibe I was going for was more this, you know, like if you crop it, it kind of looks like the upper part would kind of pass as like a princess top of the dress. And I've seen people who buy some of my dancer suits actually use them as like tops with like pants or skirts.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You could do that, and it would give it more, I guess you could say, of like a princess look because of the sleeves, I guess.
Yeah, and like if you, for example, wear pants, you can have it like tucked in, and it looks fine tucked in. While some other t-shirts look weird if you just tuck them into the jeans on it all. So it allows for a lot more movement and stuff too, while the shirt stays where it's supposed to stay.
Right. So let's move on to the next one. I believe this one is the MSD overalls that you have here. So
Yes.
kind of explain the thought process on this one, on this particular item.
Well, first off, Winnie the Pooh is a cutie. He's cute, he's sweet.
I have to
And
say, growing up, I was more of an Eeyore fan. I liked
yeah,
Eeyore when I was growing up. But I'm also
yeah,
affinity to purple, so that might be another reason why, I guess.
yeah. I think I related to Eeyore and the owl the most.
But that's
um,
not to take anything away from Pooh Bear. I mean, Pooh Bear's still a
no,
cutie.
yeah. But yeah, I managed to get my hands on actually like vintage fabric with Pooh on it.
Mm-hmm.
And a thing with like fabrics like with Pooh or like Disney or things like that. First off, you're not gonna see those items on my Etsy shop
Mm-hmm.
because copyrights.
Okay,
And
yeah.
Etsy is very fast to strike things, even if you're allowed to sell it like within fair use and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um, and license fabrics and things. But these overalls, it was just the whole thought of like being a bit childish, playful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like Pooh gives that like childhood nostalgia to most people who see him.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to kind of capture that nostalgia at the same time, in a piece of clothing for the
Mm-hmm.
dolls. And I think I managed to do it pretty well, at
Mm-hmm.
least.
And is that also why you made the decision to make the outfit in an MSD style as well?
Um, no, I honestly don't know. I just kind of
It just so
went
happened to
for it.
fall that way.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it just happens to go in a certain direction.
Okay.
I made multiple Pooh items in SD size before, and I was like, the MSDs need some love,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll make an overall because I think it's a really cute item.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then let's see. The next one that you have is the SD sweater top here. So, how about this item? What led to this creation?
Well, I like these. I call them swaddle tops because it's kind of like it kind of looks a bit like you've wrapped around in it,
Mm-hmm.
because of the layering.
Right, I can see it from the picture. It's kind of like a. I'm trying to get my bearings. It's like a right over left kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a two-layered
Mm-hmm.
front. Um, and I don't know the exact like creative decisions I made, other than like I wanted this fabric is really soft, I will tell you that, and I wanted the sleeves to have that like flow in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So the sleeves are two parted and has a lot of extra fabric by the edge of the sleeve
Mm-hmm.
to get that bigger feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then I had this really cute white lace with little crosses on them. So to me, this is a kind of like it gives the vibe of like a pink female priest
Mm-hmm.
or like a healer kind of top.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I
It's
could
very
see that.
it's a very modest sweater.
Mm-hmm.
So I could like see like an anime nurse or something in like a church
Mm-hmm.
wear something like that.
Mm.
Um,
It looks like
so
if it was like something a real person would wear, like it looks very comfy.
oh yeah, that would be comfortable. Like that fabric, I will tell you, I would wear that.
Yeah, it
Like
looks like something that you would just like to cuddle up in. It looks very comfy to wear.
yeah, some of the fabrics I get are really comfortable, but it's hard to make human-sized things.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was a lot of like, I guess like basically like if Nurse Joy was a Christian anime girl.
It would be something that Nurse Joy would wear.
Yeah, you know, if Nurse Joy was in like a church out in the middle of a field somewhere, you know, near a mountain, kind of sound of music.
Right, right.
Um,
And then one thing I think is very interesting because I said it in the beginning is that your shop has multiple different kinds of things. It's not
yeah,
just like tops. It's not just like dresses or things like that. So
And it's not just lingerie and stuff like that either.
right. So like the one thing I wanted to talk about and show to the audience here is that you also make 3D printed items, which I thought was interesting. So you have in this next picture, you actually have cell phones and cell phone cases in doll size that you sell. So what led you to, kind of take another direction in your shop and do something like this, which is different from clothing?
Well, we received a 3D printer,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted a 3D printer for a long while, and I wanted to print things for my dolls,
Mm-hmm.
just personally. Um, and I kind of ended up with a bit of like some everyday things your doll would like wants to have as accessories and stuff, and got to a point where like a phone is pretty like essential nowadays.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And with that, a phone case is quite personal,
Mm-hmm.
like it's how you personalize the outside of your phone
Oh yeah, I
nowadays.
definitely have that for my phone. Like I'm a big anime person, and I have like, I don't know if you could see it on the camera. I have Asuna
Yeah,
on my phone case because
yeah,
one of
like
my
I
favorite
have
characters.
I have multiple ones with flamingos on them. you know it's it's how I personalize my phone, and it's also
Right,
how to keep it safe.
right, right.
um so in a similar vein, I laid it out so that you can get a phone and a case as a package deal, or
Mm-hmm.
you can buy the phone and case separately.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed you have different even styles when it comes to phone cases too.
Yeah, I'm recently experimenting with new phone case styles, as you can
Mm-hmm.
see on the like green cases next to it.
Mm-hmm.
Experimenting with some just cute, simple animal faces and stuff that is easy to 3D print.
Right.
Um, because I could do like custom painted phone cases and stuff too, but that will be a lot of added cost too, because that takes a lot more work.
Right, right.
Um,
And
so
it's
I
and it's a
wanted,
whole nother skill too to learn how to I guess paint it properly and so that it would come out without without smudges or things like that. Like that takes
yeah,
practice
and
and time as well.
I need them to be able to paint it in a way that doesn't stain a doll's hand too.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. Mm-hmm.
At the moment, the only thing that could be a stain risk would probably be the like screen.
Mm-hmm.
But I print those, I glue them on, and I add a varnish so that they don't get damaged
Mm-hmm.
and shouldn't. It genuinely shouldn't stain.
Mm-hmm. Like
Um,
when you say varnish, you mean like a clear coat?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
I add a clear coat that's usually a bit shiny, so it gives a bit of that screen look and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I do with the phones and cases is that they're all compatible with each other.
Mm.
Even if you buy 3 different phones in 1/3 scale in different colors, they'll fit in the same case.
Oh, okay, that's good.
And the same thing with all the cases on the phones.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so they're
So I
all
have
interchangeable.
one model phone,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll do multiple models of cases, but they'll fit the same phone.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, first of all, your dolls don't need like 20 different brands of phone. At least mine don't.
Yeah.
um, and then I rather have the compatibility to like buy a couple of new cases every so often
Mm-hmm.
to upgrade a phone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if someone ends up buying another phone, I still want it to be suitable to fit with the old cases.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike like every phone creator in the world at the moment, where
Yeah.
no case suits any other phone.
Yeah, there's so many different brands of phones and they all need their own particular brand
Yeah,
casing and style. Yeah, so it can get confusing, but it's nice that with at least yours, you can only need the one phone and then you could
yeah,
just customize the different cases afterwards. So
yeah. I currently don't have any good pictures on my specific website.
Mhm.
Also, hello, my lady disdain.
Oh,
Uh,
hey, my lady disdain. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, I mean,
Uh,
it's interesting that you have that there so that you can just have the one phone and then you can personalize it with like all different kinds of
yeah,
cases on there.
and like if you get a black phone, it doesn't mean that you have to stick with a black case.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a case in any of the other colors I offer, or even ask for a custom color.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an
And
option. I didn't know that. You can ask for a custom color, like if it's not pictured
you
there.
can ask for a specific color. I have limited amounts of filaments in a lot of colors.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a big enough demand, I do get in like bigger rolls of it
Mm-hmm.
and make multiples.
Okay.
Um, but like for one-offs, I do have like basically enough from like a 3D pen is able to print a case.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's a way that I offer some customization options for the colors, but I already offer a lot of colors.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So, like, now that we've explored kind of like your beginnings and what it's like starting a shop and all that kind of things, and we see the products that you own, is there any advice that you can give to people? Like, let's say they wanted to, they're inspired by you and your origin story and how you started, as a hobbyist, and then now you have your own like side business of making things and selling things online. um what could people do, like if they want to get into making doll clothes or one third accessories for their dolls? Like, you have any advice for people, like if they're like any planning advice or specific tools that would be helpful that you wish you knew about when you started but you only know nowadays? What kind of things can you give to the audience, if they want to start?
Well, I can say that you can start with just like how I started, with basically a needle, some thread, and a sock,
Mm-hmm.
and design your first clothing item for a doll.
Mm-hmm.
Like for smart dolls, depending on the sock, you don't even need a needle and thread. You can just cut it and it'll work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's a very easy way to make like a tube top.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to like get going a bit bigger or better, um, find a type of stitching that you're comfortable with. If that's hand stitching, go for it. I personally prefer machine stitching,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have some hand problems and stuff too that makes it a bit harder to just run on hand stitching forever.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's always benefits with stitching on a machine,
Mm-hmm.
like the quality of the stitches and the like consistency and stuff. But I will say you don't need a fancy sewing machine. You don't need to pay like $1,000 for a sewing machine.
Mm-hmm.
You can get one for a couple of $100 and it'll work fine.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you need is to actually clean it, which a lot of people don't know they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take a couple of pieces apart and clean it, and preferably add some machine oil.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with changing a needle.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this for the longest time, but needles are not supposed to only be changed when they break.
Okay, so there's
I didn't know that.
so there's
I
like
didn't know that.
a wear and tear to it where I
Yes.
suppose it loses its edge, I guess, and you have to change it out.
Yeah, it kind of like loses sharpness.
Mm-hmm.
So after a certain time, you do have to change needle.
Mm.
Yeah, you don't need anything fancy at all to start sewing. The only thing is to change needle and like clean the sewing machine, and you get very far.
Mm.
That's basically how my old sewing machine still runs.
And if
um,
anybody needed to, like, if they were new and they need to find it, I'm sure there's some kind of guide or something online, like on YouTube or
oh,
something, on
there's
how to clean a sewing machine properly or something like
yes,
that.
and depending on what, like if it's one of the cheaper sewing machines, it's usually quite easy to clean the most important parts to clean.
Hmm.
It's just about removing a lot of lint, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't even know that. I mean, I obviously
Yeah,
don't sew anything, but if I were to guess, I would have never guessed that you would actually have to clean out the sewing machine.
Yeah, but like there are openings to the mechanisms, so some lint always gets pulled down. Um, but like that's the thing I didn't know, that you like have to do upkeep on the sewing machine. I used the same sewing machine with the same needle for way too long. And it's noticeable in what you sew. It is.
Oh, okay.
The sewing machine itself can be like like a really cheap off-brand thing, family sewing machine or something. But as long as the needle is in okay condition and it's clean-ish, it's gonna sew. Unless it's like out of time and stuff, but that's a lot more complicated.
Shiki says there's also more than one type of needle. Some are more suitable for stretchy fabric, while others are better for thicker ones like denim. Oh, I didn't even... Again, I don't sew, so I didn't know that, but that's good information.
A basic thing I always recommend for just starting sewing is getting the universal needle. At least for me. I usually buy from a specific brand of needle, but you don't have to buy from them specifically. I have from like multiple types. I change them not enough depending on the fabric I sew, but with just universal needles, you can get through most fabrics. It's a different story if you start sewing in denim and leather. But most beginners are not gonna start sewing in denim and leather for their dolls. At least I hope not. Those are expensive.
Yeah, I was about to say those are probably expensive to buy.
But when it comes to like starting out with fabrics, you can start with anything from a sock, a t-shirt, like an old duvet cover, some kinds of curtains. I basically always, at least for sewing machines, recommend different kinds of cotton. It's very like easy to sew in, so with a machine. It does fray a bit depending on how you sew. So you should usually hem the edges and stuff. But it's really easy to use on a sewing machine, and it doesn't really care that much about what needle you use.
I think that's
same thing with like t-shirt fabrics, like jersey fabrics and stuff. They're also not as sensitive, but if they're very stretchy, it's gonna work out differently.
Oh, I think that's a very interesting point that you brought up too, is about when choosing fabrics, how you said you can use like an old t-shirt. I think that's really cool too, because if you're looking for a specific look, like let's say you want to make a t-shirt for a doll, using a regular human's t-shirt as your fabric base to make the t-shirt for the doll is actually that's the best way to get like a real t-shirt look, like for a miniature, rather than using a random like cotton cloth from a store or something.
Same thing, if you want this like fancy hem on the edge of the sleeves, you can make sure to cut out the sleeves out of the bottom of the t-shirt sleeve. And you don't have to do that hem. You just have to stitch them closed.
Right.
There's a lot of like different small hacks like those you can do. I work a lot with bought fabrics, but I have also worked a lot with like recycled fabrics. And recycling fabrics is cheap. You can get like cheap t-shirt from a Goodwill or something. And sew from it, or get like a blanket cover or something in like a simple cotton fabric, and you have a lot of fabric to work with for cheap. Usually even cheaper than buying like yards of fabric. It's kind of how I experiment with human-sized clothing, because it's a cheap way to get a lot of fabric.
I see.
And if you, for example, sewing for dolls, you get very far with just a small square of fabric.
Right, because the dolls are much smaller than a human, so so you have more to work with.
Yeah, it's why some of my clothing are like one-offs, because I have just enough clothing to make that garment for a doll. sometimes I have very small bits of the fabric and I really want to use it, and I try to optimize it. And that's sometimes why I can't restock certain items.
Uh,
Um,
we have
some
another
items I
comment
do
though.
restock.
We have another comment that from My Lady Disdain saying, some of the more expensive ones, I'm assuming she means sewing machines, don't let you access everything. I guess for when you're cleaning out.
Yes.
And she also says something about breaking down garments carefully help you learn too.
Yeah. You can take apart like human-sized clothes or doll-sized clothing and learn from the pattern.
Oh,
Um,
that's good. I didn't think about that. So, like,
I
if
do
you
that
wanted to
mostly
imitate
for.
something for yourself, you could see how it's done.
I mostly copy human-sized patterns,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes I do study some like doll-sized garments to get something similar.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I want to work from it, and then sometimes I modify it, of course, to give my own twist to it.
Right.
But to just like get the basic shapes down from a different pattern helps a lot in learning how to make new patterns.
Mm.
But a lot of people don't have. You don't have to make your own pattern. There's purchasables. There's free patterns.
Right. I know
I,
SmartDoll does offer free patterns. Like Danny will put them on
SmartDoll
his
has
site.
some. I think Enchantarium has some. There's a whole collection of it in the My Lady Disdain Discord.
Mm-hmm.
I have a free MSD pattern on my website.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really simple and old one, but it's a free pattern if anyone ever
Mm-hmm.
wants it.
So
It's
there
listed
are.
as a shop item, but it's literally at the price 0.
Mm-hmm. So
um,
what you're saying is that if you're new and you're trying to get started in making clothing, there are free resources out there for you to get started.
yes.
At least pattern wise, so you know how to get going. I guess.
Yeah, and like something we spoke about earlier, like YouTubers, like My Froggy Stuff, they
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of info on things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that My Froggy Stuff actually has some SmartDoll patterns free
Mm-hmm.
um, that are available. I haven't worked with those specifically myself, but that's because I kind of found them after I already curated similar ones for
Oh, I
myself.
see. I see.
But the SmartDoll patterns, they're free to use and you can use them to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I always thought that was very interesting about when he posted that. He was like, "It's free to use, sell and make money all you want on these patterns."
uh, basically all of my SmartDoll leggings are made with that pattern,
Okay.
with their SmartDoll legging pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Then I modify like length and stuff and do some other things like high waist and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like uh, some places have tutorials with their patterns and some places don't.
Mm.
Um, like I know that multiple Etsy sellers have like full-on written out tutorials. I know that some even have video tutorials.
Oh wow. Okay.
I do personally plan on making a like simple tutorial on how to mod free patterns,
Mm-hmm.
where I basically take some of the free SmartDoll patterns and mod them and talk about how to mod them and what I do to make certain things look a certain way.
Oh, that's cool. That'll definitely be cool. Would you be offering that on, like, I guess, your website once you're done putting it
Probably a
together?
mix. Probably a mix of my website and my YouTube channel. I barely upload on my YouTube channel.
Oh, I was gonna say I
uh,
didn't even know you had a YouTube channel.
yeah, no, it's mainly like unboxings and just me
Hmm.
rambling on that play over there. But I hope to make some like sewing educational videos.
Oh, that's cool. Is
Um,
the because I didn't know about it. Is your YouTube channel under the same name? Is it
it's like No Other Designs, I
like
believe.
No Otter Designs? Okay, just
Yeah,
send it to me in message, and I'll update it on the video's description
yeah,
so that people will know where to find you and check out those videos when you have them up. That'll definitely
yeah.
be really cool learning resource.
Yeah, same thing on my Instagram. I do post a couple of like educational things. I have one mini tutorial on attaching lace
Mm-hmm.
because someone asked for it, but I'm probably gonna make a bit longer video about sewing on lace to different kinds of fabric
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't a very good video made.
Well, sometimes, our earlier videos don't turn out the way that we want them to. Like I know looking back on some of my very first videos is really rough.
Oh yeah, I
It's like
remember
really
some of the
rough.
things I posted on YouTube when I was like 12 and ooh.
And like when I watch them now, like I still have them up, so if anybody wants to watch them, they can. But like when I watch them now, I was like, ooh, yeah, that was really rough. I could have done so much better.
Yeah, some of my older videos are probably still up there, but I'm scared to search for them because I don't have access to accounts anymore, so I have no clue.
Oh, okay. So that's cool. So that's really good advice, and I think that's really awesome. Like if anyone's watching this at a later date on the VODs, I'll definitely put your YouTube page in the description so that if you want to see any of those tutorials, you can definitely check out Tyler's YouTube page for that. So now thank you very much for participating in today's episode. We're nearing the end. And like all my other episodes, I always give my guests the option to, if they want to participate in some of the other fun things I do. So I know Tyler said that he wanted to participate in the Dream Doll and the Anime Corner for today's episode. So we're going to do that. Let me see. We're going to move that over here. Okay, so we're going to do the Dream Doll first. So this one is very interesting. I didn't know about this one, so I had to look it up. But you picked this one, which is called the BNA Brand New Animal, and the character's name is Michiru Kagemori, which I believe is the main character of the show for BNA. And for those of you that are interested in watching this show, I did find myself. I found it on Netflix. I'm not sure if that's the same place where you watched it.
It is Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
It is a Netflix series.
So it is a Netflix series, and I watched the first episode because I wanted to know what it was about because it looks really interesting. And from what I can gather, it sounds like it's in another, a future universe where there are beast people and human people, and they live kind of separately. They each have their own kind of cities, but they're at odds with each other, which I thought was really interesting.
It's kind of like a different take on discrimination against people who are different.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the human people are scared because of the animal people kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character, I'm not gonna spoil much, but she thought she was a human, but she's not.
Oh yeah, so that brings me to the next part because you wanted to list this Michiru Kagemori as your dream doll candidate, and this is actually her picture here. So this is her. She has two forms. Like she has the animal form, and then she has this human form. And it's
she's
not
adorable in both, I will tell.
Yeah, and it's not really a spoiler because I only watched the first episode, and you find out in the very first episode that she has like a human form and an animal form. So it's not really giving that much away. So you picked this character as your candidate that you wanted to see a dream doll in. And I scoured through like different kind of like design sculpts and things like that. So I came up with, if you're using Dolphy Dream, I think like a DCH13 head or a DCH21 head would actually kind of cover like how she looks, at least in these pictures that I picked. They kind of fit her look. And if you wanted to make a custom character, I think these would be good candidates for it.
Yeah, the DCH13 kind of has a bit of that eye shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little hard to mimic the eye shape for for that because like it's a little bit more ovally but I think this kind of matches, and like the open mouth expression kind of looks good for her human form. And then the DCH21, which I thought was really funny, is that they have this pursed lip kind of look, and it kind of matches like a cat kind of like imitation of a look. So I thought that would be really cool. Like if you wanted to create your own Michiru character that you could use those. And then if you wanted to go the route of using smart doll heads, The best one that I thought was really cool, and it just so happens that Danny Chu posted a picture about this very, very recently,
Yeah.
was like Mirai in his new cat ears that he's releasing. So like he was posting on his Twitter that he's releasing the STL files to make these cat ear things, and I think it just kind of matches because I think Mirai has like a great look to use as a
Yeah.
base for Michiru. Like you just have to like if you're gonna do the animal form, you would have to I guess paint or do a face up to make that like that darkness around her eyes for like the kind of like raccoon like patch. And then like with these ears that you could plug in from the STL files, you could definitely make that look. Like I know she's more of a raccoon than a cat, but it kind of matches. So it
Yeah,
looks good.
This doesn't spoil anything really, but she's a tanuki.
She's a what?
A tanuki.
Oh wait, what is the tanuki?
It's like it's kind of like a raccoon spirit animal in Japanese folklore.
Oh, okay. Because I was like drawing a blank there for a second. I was like, wait, I know I've
Oh,
heard tanuki, but I don't really remember
my
what it
lady
was.
Disdain said that Monday could be the beast form.
I could see that.
Maybe,
I could see that.
but
A little bit
the only
because of the
thing,
button nose, maybe.
yeah, I'm just thinking that it's a bit too much nose on Monday, maybe,
Hmm.
because it's such a like tiny.
Mm-hmm.
While Monday has a bit more nose going on.
Mm-hmm. But I do
Um,
think probably the Monday eye shape might work
I'm
too.
here like, yeah, the Monday eyes would work. Looking at my Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, the Monday eye shape would definitely kind of work too for the face, which I think would be awesome. But she's
Yeah.
definitely an adorable character. And I have to finish watching the show now because I feel like after watching the first episode, even though it doesn't give much, there was like a lot of information that made me, at least me personally, invested. So it's like now I
There's
want
a
to
lot
know.
more going on.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
lot
like
more
now I
going
want to
on.
know like what's this like conflict between like the beast people and the humans that they kind of alluded to. And if you only watch the first episode, it leaves you off at a big cliffhanger too. Like it's like something happens at the end of the first episode and you're like, "What? They're going to end it there?" So now I have to go back and like actually finish it because I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I really want to know now like what's going on."
Yeah.
And but the only thing I will say is that if you do want to watch this show, uh I don't know if I could recommend it to younger kids to watch because
Mm.
there are some fighting scenes in it, and it's not super super graphic, but it depending on like parents, like on what you want to expose your kids to, I'm not entirely sure if it would be kid friendly. So if for you parents watching out there, just make sure you check out the show yourself first before you
Yeah,
letting
I'd
your
probably
letting
say
your
at the
kids
very
watch
least a
it.
teen. At the very least, teen.
Yeah, because there are some fighting
Yeah.
scenes, and depending on family values or culture, you may not be interested in some of those things for your kids. But it is a good show so far, from what I could see. I'm definitely interested to find out what
It gets
happens with the
better.
rest. So yeah, that is our section for Dream Doll, and Tyler wanted to participate in my little anime corner that I talk about. Like now, the anime corner is something I just kind of added because I'm really huge fan of anime, and it's a huge part of my doll addiction too. Is that I like getting collaborated anime characters. So I want to also talk about anime shows, and Tyler has actually one show that he wanted to show, but then a second show that's very affiliated with the original
Yeah.
show. So let's move on to that. So this one is called Junjo Romantica, aka Pure Romance, I guess is the English translation for this. And explain to everybody what this show is. Now I watched the first episode of this and I was a little confused in the beginning, but then once like it got going, then I was like, okay, I can kind of see where they're going with this story. This seems a little interesting, and I could see like the conflict that is going to arise from this. But if you can explain like why you picked this as your favorite show that you want to share with people.
Well, as a young lad, no. I guess I will say I've had a big thing for boy love for a long time. It was
Mhm.
like even before I came out as like masculine presenting myself.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just such a like sweet portrayal or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just love the fact that it's not the obvious
Mm-hmm.
like relations most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Junior Romantica is it kind of follows multiple different gay couples.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not open to like LGBT,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not gonna be interested.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that much. But it's a lot of like slice of life and a bit of a rom-com situation.
Mm-hmm.
I love a lot of the like facial expressions they use sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get to see those like right away all the time, but sometimes you just have those classic anime expressions.
Mm-hmm.
Like when someone's defeated, they have that specific, face
Oh
that's just
yeah.
so anime.
It's like that anime dejected like look.
Yeah, or like the whole like doom, doom,
Yeah,
doom.
yeah, yeah.
All of those like I love those kind of faces in this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally kind of relate to at least some of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the characters I just dream about. um, it's just a really fun anime for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some in the beginning, some episodes can be a bit saucy, a bit
Mm-hmm.
spicy. So not recommended for like young children or like below a certain age.
Mm-hmm.
They don't show anything specific, but they allude quite heavily
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, it's not a show for kids to watch because some of the things that they show, like, especially if you take it out of
They also
context,
do
it's
show they like do also show like smoking.
mm-hmm. Right.
Not weed.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
yeah,
will say
just
that
cigarettes. Yeah.
just cigarettes, but like it's like basically a character trait in one
Mm-hmm.
of them to smoke all the time, basically.
Right. So if you're not, for those watching, if you're not familiar, this show is a part of a genre in anime that they call like boys love. So it's more of like, men interacting with other men. Although there are women in this show, as we learned in the first
Yes.
episode. So it's not like all guys, but it
One of
is.
them, at least one of them, I believe, have an ex-girlfriend or
Yeah.
ex-fiance.
Yeah. So like it's if you're into that kind of genre of a thing of boys love, it's a huge genre actually in Japan. It's a very big genre in Japan for there's a particular name for it too for like women that are interested. They call it fujoshi. Which is like women that are really into like boys love category. And if you go to Ikebukuro in Japan, a lot of the stores are dedicated to that there. That you'll find there. Not every store, but there's a lot of stores very dedicated to like BL type of stuff. But it is there are certain parts. I only watched the first episode, but there are certain parts that are kind of like you said saucy. So like the very first opening scene. The very first opening scene is a little bit saucy. Not that bad. But when the character that you see here, the one on the top of the darker hair, when he first goes over to the house of the gentleman with the bear, that scene is really saucy. Like I saw that and I was just like, okay, I didn't know that they were going to go this far in this direction. That is very interesting.
I did give a heads up. Before sending like the information.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that first scene is basically as far as it gets.
Okay. Yeah, that scene was like really saucy. But once you
It's so close.
Yeah, but once you get past that, like I can definitely see like once you get past that part of it, I can definitely see what you're saying about the slice of life and the rom-com because the interaction between these two guys here like
I will say like in the beginning, the younger guy with the brown hair, he's in denial.
Right, yeah.
Well, it is not Stockholm syndrome, I will say. Some relationships, like in anime and stuff, is like Stockholm syndrome, but they do grow to like each other in a different way over time.
And you already start seeing that growth like in the first episode. Yeah, like which I thought was interesting.
He has attraction to him from the beginning, but he's like, no, I can't be interested in boys. That's wrong, kind of thing.
Right. And then like one thing leads to another, and now you
Yeah.
have like the two of them together. I'm not going to spoil too much, but again, I only saw the first episode, but you see the two of them together and they end up like living together.
Yes.
And then
That's kind
from
of the
that,
premise of their side of the show.
right, and then from that you can kind of extrapolate what the rest of the season's gonna be like the different interactions and the different situations that they're gonna run into, living in the same place, and I think was really funny is that this guy, the guy with the lighter hair, the bigger gentleman or the older gentleman, is that his affinity or liking towards toys in his home.
Yeah.
He has like and when I say toys, I don't mean something like in a weird sexual
No.
nature.
He
I mean
has
like literal
plushies and
toys.
children's
Yeah, he
toys.
has like plushies and toy trains and like like all these like all over his house, which I thought was like so funny.
Which is also funny because he's like a rich, successful, basically businessman.
Yeah, he's they tell you in the very first episode he's like this super rich, super successful like person in the industry that
But
a lot
he
of
can't be
people
without his plushie.
yeah, like a lot of people look up to. But then like he has like this, like you could see in the picture, he has this bear, and then like the bear shows up in like so many scenes after that. Like
Yeah,
you don't see him without the bear, which I think was like so funny.
Like in the apartment, you'll see that bear all over the place.
Yeah. And like I could tell you from like somebody that like I don't watch like BL stuff. So this is like my first exposure to it is from your suggestion, and I already see it being funny. Like I had like it was a little, some of the scenes were unexpected, and like I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't think it was going to be like this." But then other times in the episode I was like, "Oh, this is cool. Like I like this interaction, and like it's
It's
really
a lot of different things going on.
yeah, and
It has
it's
some like intense, more
mhm.
adult-ish scenes,
Mhm.
but it also has like like you boiled the eggs the wrong way, or like
Yeah, it has its
like
like slice of life moments that are really cute, and it has that rom-com feel to it. So it's definitely a
and
cool show.
also a bit of like Yellow's boyfriend kind of thing going on
Hmm.
too sometimes.
Yeah, so
Um,
if you are, watching this, like definitely keep an open mind, when you're watching this, and it's a really cool genre so far from what I could see, or at least just this one show that I thought was really interesting. And you give it a try. You might find something that you like, So I definitely will watch a little bit more of this to see how this relationship between these two characters pan out, because I thought it was just really funny how they even got together in the first place. Um, but the next show that you have, oh, and also just to let people know, if you do want to watch this show, I was able to find it on Crunchyroll. Like, so this was actually on Crunchyroll. That's how I was able to find it. But is there any other place that you know of? Like, how did you end up watching this show or finding out about it?
I might not have watched it legally.
Oh, okay.
um, no, it was so long ago when I first found
Hmm.
the show,
Hmm.
and at this point I like have it legally on like drive on my computer.
Oh, okay.
But I got into it through like Kiss Anime.
Oh yeah, Kiss Anime. Oh
So
my god.
like it's
That for those
again.
that don't know, Kiss Anime was a hugely popular site like way back in the day. This is like before streaming became really popular. Like
Again, we have the whole thing of internet was a different place.
yeah, the internet was a different place back then, and you didn't have services like Crunchyroll or High Dive or any of that, or even Netflix.
No, if you wanted anime, you had to just
yeah, you had to
around.
scour the dark web like to find anime way back in the day, and Kiss Anime was one of those sites that was hugely popular for that. But yeah, if you want to watch it nowadays and you want to watch it, like the legal way, I was able to find this one on Crunchyroll. So if you have a Crunchyroll account, or even if you don't, I believe Crunchyroll is free to most people, and you only have to pay if you want to watch the newest simultaneous, like as it's released kind of stuff. So you can definitely check this out on Crunchyroll. That's where I was able to find it. And then the next show that you wanted to talk about is something that you said was a part of the same exact universe.
Yes.
So this one is called Sekai Ichi Hatsukoi, which is the world's greatest first love. So if you could kind of explain like how this show relates to the first one.
this is in the same universe by the same author.
Mm-hmm.
This is proven in like the first episode of Sekeiichi Hatsukoi.
Mm-hmm.
Because the I keep forgetting people's names, but big old man from first in Junior Romantica, he's basically like shown in a scene
Mm-hmm.
in the beginning of Sekeiichi Hatsukoi, and I believe like one of the people in this iteration actually works for another, and it's a web, but it's very similar,
Mm-hmm.
but not identical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the whole thing of like again, rich dude has someone move in with
Mm-hmm.
him. It's a lot more of like natural meetings
Mm-hmm.
in this
So it's
specific.
just it's a whole different story. It's just set in the same world, like the same
Yeah,
universe kind of thing.
but it still falls under the boy love.
Mm-hmm.
This one doesn't have as saucy tones,
Mm-hmm.
I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a lovely show, and you get far in it. Like it has a very similar rom-com
Mm-hmm.
love vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Even just like based on this picture, you can kind of see that the a bit shorter guy is like shy and somewhat uncomfortable with the amount of love he gets from
Mm-hmm.
his boyfriend.
And again, they have like the little stuffed animal in there.
Yeah, that's a theme.
Yeah, because I wasn't able to watch this one.
Like, it's not as much of like everyone has a stuffed animal, but
Mm-hmm.
in like when sometimes they have like cutscenes where they have like a transition,
Yeah.
and depending on like what couple it is, it's usually a different plushie.
Oh, okay. So the plushie kind of like represents which couple, is on there.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
at least to an extent.
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to find this one and watch this episode, so I didn't have too much to contribute on what it is about. But if it's
Yeah,
anything like the other one for pure romance, then this one's probably going to be just as funny if it's the same thing, like same universe and author.
Yeah. I know Sekeiichi Hatsukoi is harder to find.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why.
Mm-hmm.
But I know it's a bit harder to find that one.
Mm-hmm. But it is
there
popular.
is-
Like both these shows is popular because I know Junjo Romantica. I was doing a little research on it. The
Yeah.
pure romance one, it was from 2008 to 2015, and it actually has 3 seasons of that
Yeah.
show. And then this other one, the Sekai Ichi Hatsukoi, this one actually has 2 seasons and 2 movies as well.
Yeah.
So it's it's pretty popular. It's not like it's like a one-off kind of show.
There's also a couple of OVAs, but I haven't gotten to see those because I don't know where to find them.
Yeah, so you might have to scour the dark web for those in order to find those shows.
I am on the hunt on eBay for like DVDs, but it's sometimes hard to find.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for participating in today's episode of Beyond the Doll. It was so awesome to have you on. And you're the first guest I ever had on my show that to talk about like, the whole clothing and selling side of the aspect. I've been wanting to get somebody on the show that can, lend their experience on what it's like to make doll clothes and selling doll clothes and the different things that you run into. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to be on today's episode, especially the fact that I'm here in New Jersey and you're all the way in Sweden, and it's a huge time difference. So aligning the times, I feel so bad we've kept you up so late.
You've seen the sun going
up. I see the sun going up in your background. It was dark when we started the episode. Now it's like, very much so morning. So I do very much so appreciate you taking out the time to be on today's episode and lending your expertise to everybody watching. So we really do appreciate that, and I want to thank you for participating in that. And before I let you go, I do want to play a little word association game. I usually play this with all my guests. I missed it with Kat, but Kat's scheduled to come back on another episode, so I'll get her back on that one. But I do want to play a little game with you before I let you go. So the name of the game is word association. I'm going to give you 5 words. 3 of them are going to be doll related, and 2 are just going to be random words. And you just got to give me the first thing that pops in your head. There's no real prizes or anything later, anything about that. I mean, there is a prize, but like it's really just for fun. And then at the end of the season of Beyond the Doll, I'm gonna like put up a poll and people get to vote, and the winner will get like a special prize or something like that. So it is like a prize thing, but it's not like a huge thing. It's just mostly just for fun.
Yeah.
So whenever you're ready, I'll give you the topic, and then just give me the first thing that comes to mind, and then I'll give it some time before I move on to the next topic, so you can kind of clear your head, kind of thing. So you ready?
Yep.
Okay. So first word for the game is going to be fabric.
I instantly just think Fabric Friends and Dolls.
Fabric Friends and Dolls, which is a shop here in the United States with Iris. Very lovely shop. You should definitely check that out.
I haven't had with them to do myself, but I recently heard about them in videos, so it's
okay. And then the next word is snacks. Ooh, what's that? Magis.
It says mice, which is actually corn.
It's a corn snack? Ooh.
Yeah, it's like this is basically like popcorn, but like in cake, in like cookie form.
Yeah, I've never heard of it. Is that like a Swedish snack?
Kind of like Rice Krispie.
Oh, like a Rice Krispie? Okay.
But like made of corn with the taste of popcorn.
Oh, that sounds interesting. It sounds really interesting. Okay.
I'm a snack kind of person, so there's usually some kind of snack nearby.
Yeah, I like to snack too. It's like a bad habit.
Yeah, it's why I'm a certain weight.
Okay, and then the next word is sewing machine.
Broken.
I know technically it's 2 words, but it's like one thing. It's like one item. But yeah, sewing machine.
I'm so annoyed because my heavy duty sewing machine keeps breaking.
Oh my goodness. That must be annoying.
My old sheep thing I have under my table here, it's like, nah, I'm gonna sew. It's like a dandelion going concrete,
Oh no.
Like I bought a fancy heavy duty one and it just keeps not working.
Oh no. All right, so the next term is travel. I'm drawing a blank on this one, huh?
It's more of a like, don't know what to say really. I'd say like theme park.
Ooh, theme park. Ooh, those are good. I like theme parks. Is there a lot of them over there in Sweden?
A couple.
There's a couple one?
I live quite a bit away from multiple ones.
Mm-hmm.
The nearest one is like one of the most well known. There's 2 very well known ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, but I really like roller coasters.
Oh, okay. I can't do roller
and I haven't
coasters.
gotten to go to any theme park this year. So.
Oh. Yeah, roller coasters is not my thing because I get scared way too easily on those.
Oh no, I'm the kind of person that's just sitting there like. Everyone else is screaming and I'm just there like, hey.
I went on a roller coaster and I freaked the hell out. I can't do them. I can't do them.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And then last word for today's game is clasps.
Clasps.
Yeah, like the clasp you would put like, or button that you would put on doll clothing. That would snap together.
My first thought is suspenders.
Suspenders?
Yeah, because they kind of use a kind of clasp to just...
Mm-hmm. To like keep them in place and hold them together. Yeah. Okay, well, awesome. Thank you very much for participating in the game. And I know that the one thing I think was really interesting is when I put snacks on there. and you held up the popcorn thing. I think that was just really funny because I remember our first conversations talking to you about like snacks and talking about food. We were talking about like what was available like, in Sweden or what
Oh
was
yeah,
and what
yeah.
was
I even sent.
available in the United States and if there were any like special snacks that you like,
Yeah, I went out of my way and took a picture of the exotic section, and
Yeah,
we have Pop Tarts and Reese's Puffs.
yeah, I saw that. The picture that you sent me was the Pop Tarts, the Reese's, and like some cereals on there, and I was like, and it's just so funny to me because obviously we live in different countries and there's different things that
Yeah.
are available. So when I saw that, I was just like, oh, those are labeled as exotics in Sweden.
Yeah, that's like exotic imports. Pop Tarts.
For us over here, and I guess worldwide, like the exotics that we can think of from Sweden is like IKEA.
Or like Swedish fish.
Yeah, and Swedish fish.
Which is like we like barely eat those kind of candies. Like
But what's
we
that?
don't
I
know where
wonder
you get
though.
that from.
Was Swedish fish just a name that they gave the candy, or did it really come
Yeah, I
from
think
Sweden?
so.
Was it
If
really?
it was from Sweden, it's not because everyone here eats it. Cause
Oh man, that's funny. But yeah, thank you for participating in today's game and for the episode in general. Like I said, I do really appreciate you being on. It was such a blast talking to you and getting to learn about like, the doll clothing and starting a shop and the different
yeah,
things that go into it. I really appreciate you lending your expertise and your knowledge on that. And I do hope that it helps out those that are watching, to get a better understanding of a seller's point of view and what goes on in your mind when you do prices or deal with customers or just the overall like how difficult it is or difficult or fun or creative to actually go into making your own things and starting your own business. So I just want to say thank you for lending us all that information.
and I will say thank you for having me. I will also say that I do accept like questions. I have an FAQ page on my website, and
Mhm.
I accept like people reaching out on Instagram too.
Mhm.
If people have any questions about like anything I do, sometimes it might take a while to respond, but I try to respond to everyone who gets in touch.
Right. Yeah, because it is YouTube and it is your business on Etsy. It's a worldwide thing. So, just do take into account the time difference when you send your messages cuz Tyler might not be able to get to you, if you send it in the middle of the night while he's sleeping.
Yeah, or if I'm at work or something.
Yeah.
It's
But definitely check out Tyler's shop, Like No Otter Shop, which I think is a very interesting and funny name, the play on words with that. But
it's
it's
based on my logo.
yeah, with the otter on there. So
Yeah.
it's www.likeNoOtterShop.com to find Tyler's website to purchase any kind of goods. And if you do want to visit the Etsy page, if you were so inclined, it is also under Like No Otter Shop over there. And you also have I posted your Instagram handle on there so they can find you on Instagram for your products or even if they wanted to contact you on Instagram, that is your handle there. I will include all the information in the description below for those of you watching the VODs if you want to check out Tyler's shop, Like No Otter Shop. So thank you very much for coming on today's show. Like I said, I really do appreciate it and thank you for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate this too.
Okay. Thank you. And for everybody that's watching, thank you for attending. For those of you that came on the live stream, and thank you everybody for watching this VOD at a later date. I really do appreciate you guys watching and leaving your comments below, for both for me and for the guests, so that they can read it, at their time. If you have any questions for them, you could put it there as well. For those of you that are on the live chat, thank you for coming. My Lady Disdain, thank you for coming. Batman Jackson, thank you. Shiki Katana, thank you for coming. And I believe there were a couple others in the beginning. White Rose was here as well. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your questions and your comments during the stream. We really appreciate being able to interact with you during today's show. So, like I said, this is the end of the show. That's it for me and Tyler and my little prowess here as my guest. And I believe Tyler also had your doll there. Yeah, Liberty. So that's it for us for today's episode. Thank you everybody for coming, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you all in the next video. Bye now.
Bye.